Hello and welcome to the MinnMax Show, a place about games, friends, and getting better. I'm Ben Hansen, joined by Cyril Vasquez.
Hi.
Leo Vader today.
Howdy.
And special guest, Jake Decker from GameSpot.
Hello.
Welcome. You may know him from GameSpot After Dark, their podcast, or his wonderful videos that he's producing over there for how long at GameSpot, Jake?
5 years now. Although the first couple years, the videos I produced probably weren't that good.
Do you remember the first video you produced over there?
Oh yeah, I have it saved. It's Witcher tips on playing on the hardest difficulty, and I sound like, and then for the Witcher 3, you want to do, and it's terrible. Don't look it up, please.
What is that? There is something so strange when I go back to like old Game Informer videos or podcasts that I was on. I assume everybody has this sensation. You know, everybody that has been on old Game Informer and GameSpot videos. But it always just sounds so flat. Do you think that's nerves, or do you think that we're slowly conditioned to be more roller coastery in our voice, blah, 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 and it's a natural growth, and in 5 years, I'm just going to be a whirling dervish of a clown on podcasts?
Chalk it up to both, I'd say. I feel like everyone's trying to compete with energy levels now. And then partly because, when I started, I was terrified and didn't have a lot of self-confidence and had never done VO before. So I was just sitting in this booth and like, so I talk into this thing. So that was pretty nerve-wracking. But now terrifying. I can yell like the rest of them.
Yeah, like the greatest out there. Leo, I remember it was an early-ish video from you. I forget what it was exactly, but you made me laugh so much. Or whatever the video was, you ended it just by saying, and if you don't like me, let me have it in the comments. Just tear into me. And you just like leaned into it. Do you remember what that was?
No, maybe the PUBG Fortnite video?
Maybe, yeah. I just love the idea of, you probably being still a little bit uncomfortable being in a big Game Informer video, but still just going directly at just tear me a new one in the comments. Have at me, you monsters.
Throw me into the deep end.
Hey, we are here to talk about next gen. A lot of excitement, a lot of buzz, a lot of bubblings out there trying to figure out what's going on. And we thought we could use this podcast to just kind of zoom in a little bit and unpack the week. What is guaranteed to be the craziest week of all of our lives, somewhere in the middle of November. That window, let's just walk through exactly what that's going to look like for us, what we're excited about, new things we've learned about big games releasing in that week, all that fun stuff. And then we're going to talk a little about VR. Leo is excited to talk about his experience and kind of renewed love affair with VR. And then we have a bunch of great community questions that people submitted on Patreon, of course. Okay, a couple things. By a couple things, I mean a whole feast to set this table with. Exciting games coming out this week. The Ghost of Tsushima multiplayer update, very exciting. We haven't played it yet at the time of this recording. Mario Kart Live home tour, the weird RC car thing we do not currently have. There's a chance I'll be getting one, and maybe we can talk about it next week. I'm very excited to check out that insane thing, especially because it's like there's a chance I might be getting it, and then I'm going to be babysitting my nephews this weekend. I was like, oh, perfect. This is going to be a great test case for Nintendo's freaky stuff. And then, of course, the game of the year, of course, is Jackbox Party Pack 7, which is releasing this week, and I'm very curious to see how that game does, and we will be talking about it and streaming it in the future. But even more table setting, letting you know that we have the Deepest Dive coming up on Wednesday of next week, and this is our first cross-media event for the Deepest Dive. We've covered a million old games. We did Chrono Trigger. We just wrapped up Super Mario 64. But this time we're tackling, Jake, please sit down for this. Are you sitting down?
I'm sitting down.
Okay, we're taking the deepest dive into The Thing. So we're covering not only the great 1982 movie, but the original short story, the original 1951 film. For people that are just listening, Jake tipped over like an anime character and blood came out of his nose. It was unbelievable. And then we're also covering the video game, tabletop game, the prequel film from 2011. We'll talk about Among Us, the things influence on the video game industry as a whole. In the first episode airing next week, we're going to be joined by your former colleague Jake, Mike Mahardy.
That's exciting.
Yeah, it should be a fun time. So if you want to join us, you can support us at any tier on Patreon and then submit a comment about the original story from 1938, which you can get on Audible. You can get it as an ebook. It's very cheap. Or that original film from 1951, and we'll read it on the show. Also, more table setting. This is an exciting week for MinnMax. We are launching our first ever documentary. If you've been listening to our show Better Quest, you've heard me talk about trying to edit this thing together. It's an old documentary that I was working on years ago that I thought this would be a perfect time to revive this. And it's about the origins of the Oregon Trail, that old video game. Going back to, what year do you think that game was first programmed, Jake?
I have no clue.
If you had to
played
just
it once.
swing for it, what do you think?
1984.
You fool! No, it turns out it goes back to 1971.
You kind of walked right into
wow.
it.
So yes, it is made in Minnesota here. So we have a documentary about that game's origins, and we're bundling it with a charity drive. So please look forward to that on our YouTube channel. The charity drive is for the New Vision Foundation, which is about teaching underprivileged kids in Minnesota digital competency skills and also just how to code and program. So it's kind of a celebration of teaching and coding. So please check that out and help share it. We'll have a link to the charity drive in the description here, but for much more on that, you can stay tuned to MinnMax in the future. Okay, so it seems like this week, next-gen stuff started to heat up a little bit by the one and only, the king of gaming, the Burger King. So there was
the Sneak King.
The Sneak King himself, that's right. He just, in a very dastardly way, tweeted out a video of him opening up a Burger King bag, and it seems like it's revealing the PlayStation 5 startup sounds, which turns out that Sony actually revealed back in June in one of their streams. They just put it right in the middle of it. But hey, do you guys want to hear the boot up sound for the PlayStation 5 together right now?
Let's do it.
All right, let's sit back and really kick off this new generation. Here we go. All right, scale of 1 to 5. Where do you put it, Suriel?
That's like a 3, I think.
Okay.
Like, I like it, but it's not. I think my favorite is still maybe the either the PS1 or PS3. So I like the idea of either the Symphony warming up or just like we're like, this is next level tech, for on the PS1. Just this is going to destroy your ears before you've even started playing anything.
Get ready for it. Yeah, the Symphony on PS3 was really nice. I think that was like Q Games that put that together with the cool flowing thing. And now it's just, PS4 is nice, but I feel like I don't see it too much. I always just got it on standby and whatnot. But Jake, I'm curious how GameSpot is handling next gen coverage. What's it like over there for you guys?
It's a bit crazy, honestly. I mean, the biggest unknown right now is Sony, just because we know so much more about the Xbox Series X, and I'm sure as many people have seen, like, there's a bunch of coverage out there. A lot of outlets have hands-on with it.
Yeah.
With the PlayStation, we don't really know what's going on with that.
Yeah.
We have a lot planned. We don't really know what to do.
And there is the waves of embargoes for the Xbox Series X. So even now, if you're watching or listening to this on Thursday, there's even more details out there. But has somebody in your office gotten their hands on the Series X?
Yeah, one person in particular Michael Hyam has done a good amount of coverage with it. Other than that, I know CNET has gotten their hands on one, Jeff Bacalar. That's as far as I know. It's a bit strange because, normally we'd have these consoles set up in a centralized location in the office so people can get what they need, capture, film it, whatever. But because of this situation, I don't really know what the whole strategy is behind it. And it's probably good. I probably shouldn't say our strategy, but
please don't reveal it. Well, I'm curious just how you guys are framing it. You have the show called Generation Next, just about what is the idea behind that show? I'm sorry, I haven't watched it yet.
So Generation Next is basically Lucy Tamor and Jordan Ramey, three very funny people just discussing next gen news. They talk about all sorts of things like memes, news, as I said before, updates, comparisons, like what TVs you should get and whatnot. They're about 20 minutes. I think they're every Friday.
Oh, nice. Yeah,
they're very good. That's kind of like our main next gen, platform on video, I'd say.
Right. Hey, Leo, I don't know if you have any thoughts just on producing video about next generation, because it's I like talking about it on the podcast. There's a part of me that likes the idea of the friendly competition between the consoles. It's fascinating. It's, going to shape the next 6 years of our lives realistically here. But there's also that angle of you don't want to be console wars, kaboom, here we go, Xbox, get it Sony, vice versa. What's that right level, Leo? I'm trying to figure it out.
I don't know. Yeah, I like the idea of one show that just covers both of them, whatever's going on.
Yeah.
I don't know. What is the Xbox Series X startup sound, by the way? Can we compare them based on that? See who won the console wars that way?
We actually just put up a video on GameSpot that has all the Xbox startup sounds, including the Series X.
Really? Is it the same as... Because the interface is the same, right? That's going to be universal across the Xbox One?
It's new, but it sounds very similar to the other ones. I watched it this morning and I was like, huh, all right.
Okay, here we go. Here is the sound. That feels like a first draft, don't you think? Hang on.
First time playing with that synthesizer.
Yeah, hang on. Joe Biden is in this ad. We'll mute him real quick. I don't think this is the Xbox Series startup, but we can listen to every startup for the Xbox. This is the official GameSpot video, just to make sure this is actually the real deal. Okay, here we go from the beginning. Classic. The weird flubber. Who can forget?
Starting up a science experiment. Strange machine.
Our favorite little white sphere for 360. Up there with the Traveler. The reimagined one for 360. The newish one. Xbox One. Quick, easy, dirty, they say. Series X. I'm sorry, One X. Too much. Okay, so that's the One X. And then there's some sort of failure screen. Okay.
It's louder and louder.
That's
so
all
they
right.
have it all the Xbox.
Oh, there we go. And then, of course, GameSpot's one lovely presenters.
The video components, I think, get really different because that first one just definitely feels like very Monster Energy. Like, this is completely black, and then it cracks open. I think they're worth watching. But, like, then you go to the 360, which feels like almost in a different class of classy, where it's just like, here's, like, the swoosh, which I don't think the new one has, right? It doesn't have that kind of final, like, sound that I think all of them have had up until the Series X.
You
right?
want the swoosh.
Yeah, I want that swoosh.
I get it, man. I totally get it. Jake, do you want to walk through what this week is going to look like for you? Let's say November 10th, Xbox Series X. November 12th, PlayStation 5. What do you expect your week to look like?
Good Lord. I don't know. I mean, I think the big thing that I want to play on next gen is Demon's Souls.
Yeah.
I'm very excited for Cyberpunk. That doesn't come out to the 19th. I'm not sure what it'll be like on the 12th for me in that regards, but Demon's Souls is the game that I really want to play. I've played through all of the Souls games, including Sekiro, except for Demon's Souls. So I'm very excited to go back and play that game in particular, especially since that is kind of the only like next gen game coming out, it seems, other than like maybe Godfall, which is only PS5 and PC.
Isn't that strange? It's so weird to look at this list of games that's coming out in that window and just be overwhelmed and realize like, well, if you want next gen exclusive, you got that and you got Destruction All-Stars, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have Astro's Playroom, which of course will be an experience that everyone will want to play and won't be like a demo-y thing.
I'm really looking forward to Astro's Playroom. You know, Astrobot is one of my favorite games of the year it came out. Was that 2 years ago? And it's the same creative director, same team. They say it's going to be like 5 hours long. And I think it's really interesting to take like that incredibly talented team that was solely VR focused and was really creative and just inventive when it came to VR development, and then take them and be like, all right, let's move them off of VR. Now they can make just a standalone platformer. But they say that like, you know, they had a lot of input because it's also very connected to the hardware team. And so the Astro's Playroom team had a lot of input on designing the DualSense and stuff like that. Also, real quick, before we get back to Demon's Souls, is Nicholas Doucette, the creative director for Astro's Playroom. He says, I can't say in detail, but if you clear everything in the game, there is a surprise that PlayStation fans will be pleased with. So, please
platinum
look
trophy.
forward to being pleased.
2 platinum trophies.
Yeah, exactly. Serial, you're locking down on Demon's Souls 2? You're going to play through that sucker?
Yeah, it'll probably be... I think I'll probably split my time across Demon's Souls and Yakuza Like a Dragon, because I've heard a lot of good things about it. Obviously, it's already been out in Japan, so some portion of that series' audience have already played it. But I just seeing things like previews come out of like the idea that this is an RPG with adults in it, I think someone mentioned, is kind of this weird thing, because you think about JRPGs and it's always like either this very stratified kind of fantasy thing, which, you know, is hard to relate to as someone who has not been on an adventure, but either that or it's like high school kids, right? Which is fine, but
great.
I feel like I like the idea of this is an RPG full of people in like their mid 20s, early 30s or whatever, late 30s, and just trying to get by, and then contextualizing that as an RPG, I think is really cool.
Yeah, and it's going to be big. What is it, like 50 hours, somewhere around there? And I remember listening to the 8-4 Play podcast where John Ricciardi played through it, and he really loved it. He's a big fan of the series. And he said, like, there's like some balancing issues that were, like, some of the boss fights were pretty uneven. And so I'm curious, since the Japanese released, if they would go back and tweak any of that stuff, or how locked that stuff is in. But that is happening, of course, on November 10th. So it's coming out Xbox Series X and S, PlayStation 4, and then on PC on that November 10th. And then the PlayStation 5 version isn't happening until March 2nd, just to make sure it's nice and confusing for everybody involved.
Yeah, I wonder how locked down it is, because I remember there was like an interface thing where like each of the possible menu options had a letter tied to it, and it was like it was pretty close to being Sega for like the acronym for the actions, and it wasn't, and people like mentioned like, oh, it should totally be that, and then they changed it. So, but that's obviously a very minor thing compared to, you know, balancing bosses.
Right. I'm still really looking forward to that, and I forget who won it in our great gamble to figure out who gets to play.
I believe it was me. I believe I won it, and then I'm going to play it, and you're not allowed. I think is how that contest went.
That seems fine. There's another indie game, or a smaller game, coming out November 10th is Sakuna of Rice and Ruin. Have you guys seen this? It's from Xseed, but it seems cool. It seems a little bit like in that Spiritfarer vein, where you're running around, farming, also going on adventures, stuff like that. So it's one of those like underdogs that's happening on that launch day that seems like a nice bite-sized thing to pick up and check out. Leo, you want to walk me through that week for you? Are you getting next-gen consoles? What does your week look like?
I am grateful I don't feel the need to get next-gen consoles. I'm seeing a lot of exclusive to one console and PC, and that's what I love to see, baby. I have more crossplay, less pressure to get a $500 box so you can play one thing.
Yeah. Okay, how does this work? Leo, you stream our Great Goatee Hunt streams every week. Am I just going to have to give you our Series X? Probably, and then I just would grab it back every time I'd want to play something personally.
Sure.
Okay, this is going to get complicated, but you got a PS4, and so if there's some of those things that are cross-gen, it's maybe not the end of the world to stream the PS4 version, as long as we make it clear this is what we're doing. Otherwise, I will have the PS5. Man, my week is so weird, but it's all thanks to Walmart. Like, Walmart says that I'm going to get the PlayStation 5 on November 12th, but that the Xbox, which is releasing on the 10th, I won't get until the 16th. I'm curious if anybody else with pre-orders has any funky dates. Have you all checked your pre-order timing for all that stuff?
Yeah, my PS5 is not coming until the 15th, I think, which is kind of a bummer. But
yeah,
I don't know. Kind of like what Leo was saying, most of these games are cross-generational, cross-platform, so I can play them on my PC. The only thing I can't do is Demon's Souls, which is, you know, what I'm most excited for, of course.
Right. Do you think you're going to play Miles Morales?
Yeah, probably. I ordered it just because I was like, well, I got the console. I got to get some games for it too. So I ordered it. I'm not a super big Spider-Man fan, so I'm not super stoked for it, but it looks great. I'm sure it'll be a fun game. At the end of the day, I couldn't get my hands on a Series X though. I tried, which is probably for the best.
Yeah, just to save you some money.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. You know, it's like the MinnMax console, you know, so I'm curious to see how much we playing it versus PC. It's just the size of these suckers. I'm looking under my TV right now trying to figure out how I'm going to squeeze these things in. But Suriel, are you looking forward to Miles Morales?
I am. I think seeing like that gameplay, I think was the first reminder that, like, you know, I really like the Spider-Man game. I don't think I like it as much as a lot of other people, but I remember playing through it and having a lot of fun with it. And I think I might end up liking Miles better than Peter Parker in this version specifically. I remember liking his sections, and I think like the way they've changed his powers, I think works really well in a game. And then I just totally forgot that Destiny also comes out that week, so I'll also be spending a lot of time. So who knows how my time will be spent at that point.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, if you had to choose, Miles Morales, we're all excited for it, but at the same time, like, if your friends are all like, let's play Beyond Light right now, because that's what, November 10th? I think that's going to be consuming your days.
Yeah, it's probably just going to be me playing the campaign for a long time and then seeing what, like, the new kind of post-endgame thing is before I kind of try to play with friends. But I think depending on when they release the raid, which is the thing that I always like to gear, like that's like my first week of any time they release a new expansion, is trying to do the raid in the first week that it's out, because they give you like an emblem. It's like a kind of a big deal, and then you can, if you do it, they give you a coupon for their store to buy a very expensive jacket. But I've never gotten the jacket, even though I've done it a couple of times. But doing that again, and maybe the jacket's cool this time, I'll get one.
If you need that jacket, I guess so. Our friends over at Game Informer have the new issue all about Miles Morales, which is a great get for them. That's really cool. So they've released a couple of videos showing off a little more gameplay from Spider-Man Miles Morales. And there's some details in the cover story too. I guess we won't spoil the first boss fight, but it sets up an opening boss fight, which is a returning character from the last game, and you're like teaming up with Peter Parker. Then it seems like it separates and it becomes Miles' story, with Peter checking in every once in a while. And there's fun things too, like apparently when you're swinging as Miles Morales, like he's a little bit more rickety and wobbly. They say like he controls like a helicopter, or he like moves like a helicopter, just because he's less used to swinging around.
Did I also miss that they mentioned that there might be a third Spider-Man at some point?
Reiner tweeted that. Yeah, I'm curious what exactly he's getting at with that.
A third character.
A third playable character? Okay, so maybe it's like...
I don't know if he said playable.
Black Cat.
It seemed like it was implied, yeah.
Yeah. I think he said third Spider-Man.
I think it was going to be a baby for more stealth sequences.
Oh, good.
That couldn't do anything at all. Just crawls around behind foot-high cover.
Controls like a helicopter also.
It is funny to think of Miles Morales in the Spider-Man game, because I think there's a huge amount of passion for Miles Morales, which is understandable. I'm trying to figure out how much of that percentage of excitement is for the character as Insomniac had him, versus people love Spider-Verse and other implementations of the character, and they're kind of implanting their enthusiasm onto this game. Because I liked Miles Morales in the Insomniac game, but it wasn't my favorite part of the game. It's like he was solid. His playable sections were pretty slow, but obviously it's going to be completely different this time around. Am I nuts? Do you think there's anything there about people just injecting their love of Spider-Verse more than specifically this Miles?
People loved him a fair amount in the Insomniac game. I think that's one of the many things that people will like.
Yeah, his role
in those games that I wouldn't have expected.
Yeah.
His role was pretty small, but I think he had like an interesting arc looking up to Peter, and I think this is kind of them, paying off that setup. But I think it's this weird inverse also of the Avengers thing, where I think when people saw the Avengers, they're like, they don't look as good as like the Robert Downey stuff. But because I think he is kind of split off from, he's not in the MCU yet, and everyone really likes Spider-Verse as this really nice kind of small surprise that kind of blew up in this big way.
Right.
I think that like catapulted versus diminished the impact of this character of like, we love Miles Morales now. He's reached out to a bunch of new people through Spider-Verse, and now you get to play as him in a game. And so but there's no like canon version of him for everyone to compare. So everyone's kind of like, I'm on board for whatever they do with Miles Morales, because I just like the character so much.
Yeah. It's funny too, thinking about like of all the games and storylines which we talked about, I think on last week's podcast, that are embracing the multiple dimensions angle, like the one character that's iconic with shattering through dimensions, like Miles Morales, like that's not a part of the storyline. But maybe Sony was like, we don't need that. We got this Ratchet and Clank in the wings that'll really pick up any sort of dimensional travel that we can handle in this system. It's a weird deal, but I'm looking forward to that. Apparently, while you're fighting as Miles Morales, you can hold L1 to like charge your Venom Strike, and then you have different moves and stuff like that. Leo, you'll be happy to know that they have some new crimes in the city to take care of, and you have like an app on your phone to find it. There's no police scanner. Also, no more puzzle lab, but you can check out Game Informer for a lot more details on Miles Morales. But that seems like that'll be taking up a fair chunk of time.
I wonder if it's a custom-made app or an app just anybody can download in that universe.
Yeah, how do you do that? You just license a buddy to make a specific Spider-Man app just for you?
Maybe after the criticisms of the dealings with the police in the first one, they're doing police as like a gig economy type thing.
Yeah, the new generation. They'll take care of it.
That can only end well. I wonder, maybe Peter could program it, right? He's like a tech whiz, right?
Just say that he is, and he can do it in a heartbeat. Let's see, other stuff on the PS5 launch date. We have Sackboy, A Big Adventure. It's coming out on PS4 and PS5. I'm excited for that. Sumo Digital, the developers of Little Big Planet 3, And it, like, you know, I'm enjoying Crash, but the idea of having just like a co-op platformer, I think would be cool to have there. It does make me wonder when they're going to announce Dreams for PS5. Because I remember even on that Dreams cover story back at Game Informer, Media Molecule, the creative director is very, very loose, which was lovely. But you know, they weren't announcing the PS5 at that point. It wasn't being talked about. And so he's framed it like, well, if Sony ever makes a next generation of PlayStation, we will just make a new version of Dreams for that. Like he just announced there in some interview, like, yeah, we're going to make a Dreams for PS5 and it'll be the same version. So I'm curious what they're saving that for. Maybe like the big PSVR push or what?
I wonder when they're going to announce Dreams for PS4. I feel like they never talk about that game.
Get out there and talk about it. Yeah, there was like a second wind with VR stuff, which somebody wrote in about asking us to talk about. I haven't checked it out yet. I don't have a PSVR. I feel bad. Do you have any sense about the reception of that VR stuff in Dreams, Leo?
No sense beyond it's cool, and it's a cool way to like model things, but it sucks that it's behind PSVR, which even if you're invested in VR, you might not just have a PSVR and you're not going to get a second headset for one specific console.
Yeah. Other stuff going back to the launch of the Xbox Series X, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, of course, is coming out. This is one that I sit back and think about every once in a while, and I'm really looking forward to. I like Scandinavian mythology enough. I'm looking forward to this. So you're going to be exploring 4 different regions in England. Something that they just revealed today is apparently you can swap your gender at any point in the story, which I didn't know. So you can just jump back and forth just to see the two, which I'm very curious how that works, but it'll be cool.
I saw in a gameplay trailer that there's, you know, male, female, and then a middle option, which is let the animus choose. And it's the text. I paused to read the text it says when you highlight over it.
Yeah.
And it said based on the strength of which gender at the time. So I don't know if it's going to be like switching you between them automatically.
Yeah, I saw that too. I think what it is that it'll swap your character depending on the mission. So maybe like, I don't know, some Ubisoft devs went through and figured out which character fit best in each scenario. So basically, if you pick that, it'll alternate between the two when it makes sense. At least that's kind of my best guess at this.
Or which performance was the best?
Yeah.
Line by line.
This line is way better.
Or just each word individually, I think they could swap it back and forth.
Is the idea that both playable characters exist in the world? Because I thought it was a thing where it's like...
I don't think so.
Yeah, the character's name is Ivor, I think.
Yeah.
And either way, you know, I guess that's that's a name that applies to both genders. But like that'd be weird if at some point, like what is like the player supposed to take away of like, well, what character am I actually playing? It's maybe a little weird, but
I mean, it's fine. Animus, it's weird stuff. Also, Game Informer had a story talking about how apparently some of the modern day stuff is taking place within the Animus. So you'll just switch to Layla, like the modern day character, but you'll still be in England, like around the settlement, and it'll just change and you can solve puzzles and stuff in the past. And they just have like VO for the modern day, which is interesting. I'm curious to see how it's all implemented. It's bizarre. But yes, the idea of building up this settlement should be exciting. You know, in interviews, it's funny. Actually, I was in that same Game Informer interview with narrative director Darby. He was talking about like, oh, we really want to shed the stereotypes of the Vikings as raiders. Instead, focus on them as like explorers and settlers, which is great, but like you're still going to be killing thousands of people as a Viking. So the idea of like, we're finally getting away from that ugly stereotype. We're just focused on
with the most
building.
violent execution animations we've had to date.
Please pre-order now, please. But
one of our editors had a chance to check it out, and we actually have his impressions up right now.
Yeah.
But one thing that interests me about it was that he kind of took away that it was similar to Mass Effect, and that your village or whatever that you continuously go back to is kind of like the Normandy, where you can go back, talk to characters, meet different people, kind of do some mini games, which I thought sounds pretty cool. As someone who, you know, I love Mass Effect, I'm curious to see what they do with it, because I think a strong sense of foundation will help Assassin's Creed, especially coming off Odyssey, which I enjoyed. But man, that game was all over the place.
Right. Yeah. And they even describe it in an interesting way where the narrative director, Darby, here, he says, there's not a hard plot driving you through. There's this series of episodes that kind of all have little stories that go back to the settlement then, which is intriguing. Like there's still, he says, like, oh, there's story here, but think of it like what do you say, like a flower shape, where you're going on these little episodic things to then build up your settlement even more. And then in the latest trailer, they showed like the settlement could even be attacked and stuff. So that seems so cool. And they also revealed that you will be able to drink magic Norse potion, magic hallucination drink, and then you'll be interacting with the gods and actually go to Asgard and stuff. So like, if they need a way to do it, sure, that seems cool. I'm looking forward to seeing how they tackle all that stuff and just have your Viking tripping to see gods. It'll be great.
I mean, they called it Valhalla, right? And I think at some point the temporary name was Ragnarok.
Yeah.
I think they were shuffling between. Do you think they'll have an expansion, like, because the Odyssey one was like Fate of Atlantis, I think it was. Do you think they'll just have the expansion be called Ragnarok?
I wonder, because I'm sure there's the weird stuff with God of War where they didn't exactly reveal the new God of War is called Ragnarok, but they certainly strongly implied it. And so maybe both are just waiting to see, or maybe they actually know like who actually has the copyright at this point. They're worried about the other one. I don't know what is happening there, but I think that seems likely. Yeah, that they would tie more into that with the expansion. I was thinking too, like, what are the odds that Immortals Phoenix Rising 2 will take place with Norse mythology?
Do
you think they're just going to have all this research built up from the ACs and then just pass that on for the sequel to Immortals Phoenix Rising?
One game behind every
exactly.
iteration.
Okay, it's your year. You take Ragnarok this year. Everybody just passed down from franchise to franchise. I also wonder to what extent the Immortals Phoenix Rising sequel is kind of a given, because I know Ubisoft likes to do that kind of iteration, but I think Immortals is maybe a little bit more unproven than a lot of UB franchises.
That is true. I'm really looking forward to it, but that name hopefully can break through, and that window, like early December, is kind of a tough window, but we'll see. Hopefully people check it out, because the previews have all been super positive about that thing. So, also last detail about Assassin's Creed Valhalla is apparently you get Excalibur in it.
It doesn't. Okay.
Just find Excalibur in England, which, you know what? Why not? We're in England. Let's go for it. Just have as much fun as possible here. It could happen.
The final thing is actually that the memory, the assassination someone, and then you go into this mind portal where you talk to them about their life and their values. That's back in this one.
Oh, really? Oh, that's cool.
There's lengthy conversations.
Right. Memory tunnels, they call them, or something.
Do you think you're going to play this, Leo?
Eventually. It won't be a day one thing, but I'm sure I'll pick it up. It's interesting seeing it transition to full RPG. They mentioned in a gameplay stream today that they have like a charisma stat.
Oh,
like it's not full on attributes for everything, but it's like you can improve your charisma and get new dialogue options. Things like that. I'm interested to see where it goes. And the combat, there are things I didn't like about the direction of Odyssey, but the combat and like roaming from outpost to outpost and the viability of stealth, that all felt great. So I'm curious to see more gameplay from Valhalla when it gets into people's hands.
Yeah, but obviously you're going to be going hot and heavy with Watch Dogs Legion on that same day.
Yeah, that'll be my year.
Okay. All right, great. That's consuming Leo's time. That's fine. Any new thoughts?
There's one more thing about Valhalla I do want to bring up, because our editor who went to go play it, he was doing side quests, and there was one lady who asked for viper eggs, so they got viper eggs, brought it back, and she just farted and like stunk up an entire city. Like there was like fart gas coming out of all the sewers and stuff into the city. I'm not making this up. When I heard the VO, I was like, this sounds a bit ridiculous, but I found the gameplay. We got gameplay of just like some old lady living in a sewer just letting out the biggest fart. This isn't an Assassin's Creed game.
Hi, I need to cancel my pre-order for Watch Dogs.
I'm getting the collector's edition now.
Do you think that's like a mythological figure? Like, it's Freya the farter or something? Like, do you think you're tripping when you see that? Because that seems insane.
It just was so out of left field. Like, I'm looking at all this gameplay of like, you know, Vikings cutting people's heads off, as we talked about before, and like raiding towns, and then just this old lady ripping a huge fart.
I want the voice that Layla's talking to be like, I don't think you're remembering that right.
Let's back it up a little bit.
Why do you keep inserting farts into every climactic scene here? Let's see. Other stuff we could talk about for next gen. I think it's interesting figuring out which games are giving free upgrades for the next gen version and which ones aren't at this point. So on the list of free upgrades to next gen, we have Borderlands 3, Destiny 2, Avengers, Mortal Kombat 11 Ultimate, which, Serial, do you have a hot take on Ultimate?
I like that I like the characters they're adding. I'm not like a huge Rambo person. But I think having those two like really highly requested fan characters is probably the right move, even though I'm a little trepidatious about how that's going to act as feedback for people who have been harassing devs about Mileena specifically for the last, basically since Mortal Kombat 11 came out. And that seems like people have taken that as like, yeah, if we request a character enough, they'll add it. And so it validates kind of their toxicity around that character a little bit. But Mileena as a character is like, you know, fun Kitana in a lot of ways, where she plays a little bit more dirty, has a lot more kind of like weirder tools.
What did you think specifically about like Ed Boon tweeting at some point in the past? Did he tweet something like, Mileena will never be in Mortal Kombat 11, stop asking? And then he like retweeted that tweet with, and now announcing Mileena in Mortal Kombat 11.
Yeah, I wonder. It's so hard to know at this point whether they were like, yeah, that's Ed, you know, it's just being a troll or whatever, or them eventually him just kind of being cheeky about the fact that at some point someone from Warner Brothers said, no, you should do the thing people want you to do.
Make people happy, Ed Boon, please.
Yeah.
With Rambo being in there, and RoboCop and Terminator, all this nonsense. Jeff Cork just called it Smash Brothers for dads, which I think is a perfect way to look at Mortal Kombat at this point. But anyways, other free upgrades: Elder Scrolls Online, all Ubisoft stuff, which is cool. Dirt 5. Yakuza Like a Dragon, but only the digital version. The EA stuff, like the sports games for a limited time. Cyberpunk eventually when that next-gen version comes out. And then, of course, all Xbox stuff. So even stuff like Gears Tactics, which will be debuting on the 10th. I think that'd be cool to have on the Series X there. Leo, you were confused.
If you get a game on disc that can be upgraded, do you just download the whole game on PS5? Or do they have a patch that would make that disc work?
I don't know. I doubt they would do it the same way they did it last gen, where you'd put in like the PS3 version of Black Flag into PS4 to read it. But I bet it would just be like downloading it and then registering it to your account or something. I'm curious how they're going to handle that. That's a weird one. Other big games in the launch window we haven't covered yet that we should?
Let me look at my list. I mean, I'm probably going to spend some time with the Devil May Cry 5 Special Edition.
Right.
I'm kind of hoping that, you know, that they do what I want them to do, is just make every level playable by every character, because in the original one, there were certain levels that you can only play as Dante or Nero or V. And so, like, part of it was like, oh, that's really cool that they kind of tailored the levels, but when you play through them, it feels like, okay, this is a thing maybe only this character can do, but those levels don't feel so intrinsic to the character that you have to do that. There's maybe like one Nero level where you're skateboarding on your arm that is like maybe the one level that they couldn't do with Dante, but I would like to see kind of a lot of, because that would give it a lot of replay value of like going back through and, you know, S ranking or perfecting every level with every character. But, you know, like I'm a little bummed that it's not on PC. And that's going to come as DLC later. So they just don't have that. Because I think they did that with DMC, Devil May Cry, where they released like the special edition. Like, I want to say it was either the year after the consoles came out or the year during. Okay. Where it's like, here's the 4% faster version of the game that kind of fixes a lot of the issues with the combat and stuff. But that was only on PS4 and Xbox. That never came to PC.
Gotcha. That's a weird one. Looking at November 10th, other stuff that's being released there. Fuser from Harmonix, our dear friends at Harmonix, is coming out November 10th. And I believe they announced that's going to be coming to next gen as well. They'll be making a next gen version, or it'll be backwards compatible at least, or playable. It's confusing. I got to play a bit of that game. I actually had a preview build that I messed around with for a while, and I love Harmonix. I'm not too hot on Fuser. Leo, I know we're huge fans of Drop Mix, and it feels like that Drop Mix tech, where it's all about being a DJ, remixing songs, which in Drop Mix I think was awesome, where you had that actual physical board and you're dropping cards, and it was a really fun tactile way to just remix stuff and play around with it. And it feels like a digital version of that with different songs. And then they have a whole presentation where you're going through a campaign of sorts, working with different DJs, and they have different goals for you of like, okay, now do a lo-fi mix, that type of thing, and they give you points for that. And I think some people are really hot on it, which is great, but I just think, you can buy that, or you can probably get a $10 copy of Drop Mix used, and it's a more physical, fun version of that. I just think it's a slam dunk.
Yeah, I mean, I hope they work in tandem. I would certainly like to have something that's like Drop Mix, but easier for me to boot up without having to get out that big board and plug in the speakers and boot up the app and get the cards out and everything. Side note, I just moved recently and I thought for a moment that I had accidentally thrown out my box of hundreds of drop mix cards, and I was just horrified by their shaking sound.
How many of those panic moments did you have moving about just, I have no idea where something is?
Many. They're still happening.
I know.
The final count isn't in yet.
I really had a moment of like, I know I packed up my plates and I have no idea where all of my plates are. And I scoured my entire house, could not find it. Turns out it was literally in a box in the middle of the living room that I'd stepped over 300 times. Moving is dumb, everybody. Don't do it, no matter what. Let's see. Bugs. On the 10th, I wanted to cover too. Tetris Effect Connected is coming out on the 10th. I love that game. I will play through that campaign again happily. And I believe it's launching in Game Pass as well. So this seems like it'll be a fun one just to have on deck if you're looking for stuff to play for your Series X. Now, the champion here, the one and only, November 12th, PlayStation 5, PlayStation 4, and PC, Bugsnax. It is really the best case scenario for an indie game, for a game like Bugsnax to release and just hit this like sweet spot where the internet loves to play with and talk about Bugsnax and the songs in Bugsnax. Jake, have you ever seen anything like it?
I mean, not really. The closest thing I can think of is Octodad, which is the same developer, right? So, like, I get those same vibes, which obviously makes sense, but I still have no idea what that game is about. We actually did a video recently explaining what it is. I haven't watched it,
okay.
But I don't know. It didn't jump out to me as much as it did to so many people.
Right.
But that being said, like you're saying, it comes out launch day. I'm sure I'll probably pick it up because I'll have a PS5 and not a lot to play on it.
Yeah, so it's first-person ape escape. You're going around catching bugs that all want to turn into food. It's about just understanding the habit of these bugs, how to catch these different bugs. And so just think first-person ape escape, I guess. But it seems bizarre and charming in its weird way. Let's see. Destruction All-Stars we talked about from Lucid Games, November 12th. Very curious how that thing's going to go. I want to be optimistic. We'll see how it goes. Vehicle combat game releasing for $70, which a lot of people are like, 70 seems like a bit much for that. We will see. All right, now let's get to the real juggernaut. Cyberpunk 2077. Jake, what has enthralled you about this game? Is it just, it's the juggernaut, so you have to produce a lot of content about it at GameSpot, or how do you feel about this game?
A bit of both. I've already produced a lot of content around Cyberpunk, and we're not stopping. This train won't stop. We have ideas and ideas and ideas. But no, I've been a big fan of CD Projekt Red for a long time now. Not as long as others. I really got into them on 3. Like, I dabbled with Witcher 2 and I didn't get super into it. Played 3, got absorbed into that, went back, read all the books, played all the games, whatnot. So I've been waiting for this game for a long time. I think the biggest thing for me is I just like games like this that let you create a character and just live in this world, explore that world, talk to different characters. It seems like there's less of a strong focus on narrative compared to something like The Witcher, which you play Geralt and you follow his path, which I love. But I really like the idea of just inhabiting this world. I'm a big fan of the Elder Scrolls games for similar reasons, despite all their jank and whatnot. Like, I just love being able to create a character and inhabiting a weird world. That for me is the biggest draw. I'm
totally with you. It's amazing to think about how much hype there is around this game. And then even like on the Wikipedia page, it's like barely a mention of what the core story is here. It's just amazing to see people so hyped about just, I want to just live in Night City and go on these little quests in Night City. It's really refreshing and cool. I mean, there's a larger theme. I think in trailers they talked about like the Black Wall, all that stuff that is going to be an element here. But Leo, are you curious about that main story at all? I imagine you're the type of guy that just wants to mess around in the city too, right?
Yeah, I'm interested in it because it has a character creator now and doing all that side stuff. It is interesting to see the level of hype despite not knowing those details. It feels like just a complete trust in CD Projekt Red to be making something amazing, right?
Yeah.
But I'm definitely more curious to check it out than I ever was The Witcher, for sure.
Yeah, it's the developer and just the simple idea of Cyberpunk, seeing the look, seeing the aesthetic, and be like, I'm sold. Like they've shown off the different districts, there's 6 different districts, all the gangs, stuff like that. Jake, you've made 14 videos on all of them, I believe.
pretty much.
It's amazing. What is the tiniest detail from Cyberpunk that you've learned throughout your experience here?
As in from the game or just like Cyberpunk in general?
Ooh, well, hang on. Yeah, let's zoom out. How much research did you do for Cyberpunk? Did you kind of go back into the tabletop stuff?
Oh God, I know that, like we were saying before the show started, but I have way too much useless Cyberpunk information in my head. There is some ridiculous things. Like I talked about the Killer Clown Gang, but there's also a gang called the Trekkies, which are just people who dress up like Star Trek characters. I imagine that won't be in the game because there's some licensing issues there. I don't know how they got away with it in the tabletop game, but there's just some really absurd, strange details that honestly, there's like a really good dark sense of humor in the original material that I hope makes its way into 2077, which we kind of got a glimpse of in the last Night City Wired. Before it seemed all very serious and cussing and angry men with lasers in their face and stuff like that.
Right. Okay, hang on. Can you give us a guide to going back to, some primer stuff on Cyberpunk? How did you do it? Did you play the game? Did you just read a lot? What do you recommend for people that want to dive into more stuff here?
Honestly, I think the best thing to do is just pick up Cyberpunk Red, because that has a timeline of all the events leading up to most of the events leading up to 2077. There's a lot of stuff in there that I think they purposely left out to keep the surprise for the game. But Cyberpunk Red is a great place to start.
What is Cyberpunk Red? Cyberpunk
Red, I should have said that, huh? It's the tabletop game that's a sequel to Cyberpunk 2020.
Okay.
So 2020 is still good, but it's pretty dated and it's very strange. In particular, the net running in that is kind of a mess. So Red kind of makes a ton of improvements, makes it a little bit more modern. And like I said, it pretty much lays out the entire timeline and has a lot of different scenarios. Apart from that, though, in 2020, there are a lot of like story scenarios for the tabletop game that tie into Cyberpunk 2077. For example, there is a story about Johnny Silverhand that is very important to the story of the game. Like, it's funny because they haven't said a lot about the story, but what they have said, I think I've got the story figured out, for better or worse.
Oh, interesting.
2077. Yeah, I probably know too much at this point.
Do you without spoiling anything, can you give a primer on Johnny Silverhand, Keanu Reeves' character in the game, and what we should know about it going in?
Yeah, I mean, the big thing is he is a rocker boy. He was pretty much the first rocker boy.
Rocker boy is like an actual
yeah, so rocker boy is a class in Cyberpunk, and basically they are people who make music that brings about change in the world. Similar to, I compare him a lot to Zach De La Rocha of
Rage Against the Machine.
Rage Against the Machine. Oddly enough, though, when we had Mike Pondsmith in the office, he compared him to Bono, and I was like, I don't quite get those, but you wrote it, so I guess Bono works too. But yeah, so the story starts off with Keanu Reeves' girlfriend getting kidnapped, and by Arasaka, which is one of the big corporations in Cyberpunk. He goes after them. He puts together a team, puts on a big show to basically round up a bunch of people and just do an assault on Arasaka. He gets killed, supposedly, and his body disappears. No one knows exactly what happened to him. So then cut to Cyberpunk 2077. Johnny Silverhand is in your head. There is a program that can keep people alive after they die, which is a big point in 2020 that will probably get revisited in 2077. It's probably why Johnny Silverhand is alive in some sense in 2077. I can keep going, but
I want you to keep going. I just don't want you to spoil anything. But the idea is, it's odd, or is it commonplace in this world to have kind of the Cortana, Jiminy Cricket type thing going on here?
I think it's odd. I think it's pretty odd, especially the fact that it is Johnny Silverhand, like the world famous rocker boy who is supposed to be dead.
Right.
So that will be interesting. And yeah, a big point of this game will probably be the Soul Killer program, which is something that his girlfriend created, which is why she got kidnapped, that basically rips someone's brain out of their head and puts it in like cold storage, essentially, like online cold storage, where it's hidden away, and they're kind of left as a husk afterward.
Interesting. And because they've talked about it in trailers, can you explain what the black wall is in Cyberpunk? Please be our dictionary for all things, encyclopedia for all things Cyberpunk.
I actually haven't made a video on the black wall yet, so I'm not entirely sure what the black wall is necessarily.
Okay.
So I probably couldn't get too much in depth in that, but I think it is basically like outside of the net, of the well explored net.
It's kind of like the
dark
journey,
web.
to the dark web, kind of like the older web, that type of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you had Mike Pondsmith in the office then?
Mm-hmm. This was a while ago. This was right after they had re-announced the game at E3 2018. So he couldn't say a lot, but he basically explained Cyberpunk 2020 for people who may be unfamiliar with it.
What's your take on him? What is his history? When did he create Cyberpunk? How much is he working on the game?
So when we talk, well, first of all, I think he created it in like 1980 or something like that. A lot of people say it's based off Blade Runner. Or no. A lot of people think that Cyberpunk is based off of Gibson's novels, but he actually hadn't read any of Gibson novels before he made Cyberpunk.
Oh, interesting.
Which I found fascinating. But when he was in the office, he was telling us that he went to CD Projekt Red's office pretty often in order to help them with ideas like what tech might look like, how technology could advance from 2020 to 2077. It sounds like he is way more involved than Andrzej Sapkowski was for The Witcher 3. I don't know if you guys saw that, but there was a bit of a beef going on between CD Projekt Red and Sapkowski because of money, but other reasons as well.
So has Cyberpunk ever explored this far into the future? Like, is this the equivalent of like Next Generation now for Star Trek fans or something, of just like a big leap forward and so it's completely untested territory?
Pretty much, I'd say. So the timeline is Cyberpunk 2020, which is where it starts. And then it goes Cyberpunk Red, which takes place, I think, around like 2050, maybe a little bit before that. And then there's 2077. But Cyberpunk Red came out last year, I think. So it's very new. It was like the first big step forward, I would say, because before that, they were all focused on 2020, the corporate war, which was basically a big war between the big corporations, exactly as it sounds. So yeah, there is a big jump to 2077 that there's a lot of stuff we don't know about. But that world book they released actually filled in a lot of those gaps.
Oh, nice. Do you have any big questions left about the game, or you've just already cracked every puzzle here and you got it?
Yeah, I mean, my big question is the relationship stuff, because as someone who's a big fan of Mass Effect and those kind of games, I'm interested to see what they do with it, because they said a while back that they have some big plans to make relationships seem more, maybe not realistic, but more fleshed out than they are in most video games, but we haven't really heard anything about that. So I'm curious to see how that shakes out. I almost think maybe it got cut, but I don't know. That's just me speculating.
Oh man, knowing how much vitriol the Outer Worlds team got for not making romance options in their game, if they cut this from Cyberpunk, I'd imagine the fans will explode.
I think there's still romance in some sense, but like kind of what they were talking about at the time sounded very impressive, I guess.
Right.
I don't know. So I'm curious to see how it shakes out. Like I said, I think it'll be there in some form. But when I did play it for about 4 hours in June.
Yeah.
And like all I was able to get, it was just the very beginning, but what I got on that aspect was that you basically have email and text and stuff that you can check a lot. And there's a lot of characters who reach out for jobs. So I imagine that will probably be related to the relationship somehow.
Oh, okay. Big impressions from playing it a while ago?
It reminds me a lot of GTA. In a very, like, it's definitely leans more towards the RPG side than something like GTA. However, I got out of my apartment. First thing I did was hit a cop with a crowbar because I wanted to see what would happen. And sure enough, you get like a wanted level. They said they were still balancing how the wanted level is going to work. So what I experienced probably isn't what it'll be like when the game comes out. But I just got chased by police for a bit. My like cybernetics were kind of glitching out a little bit as I was being chased. But it definitely the world seems more malleable than The Witcher 3, which you couldn't really go on those rampages that, people do in GTA, but it seems like you can definitely do that in Cyberpunk.
Oh, nice.
But to be fair, when I played it, we had 3 people playing it. Someone focused on story, someone focused on side quests, and I just focused on like trying to break the world, which
That's perfect.
I kind of did. There was a lot of bugs too. I think that was the other big takeaway when I played it back in June. A lot of bugs.
And I'm sure they've changed it, but I heard from, I think, Game Informer and other impressions are like, the driving doesn't feel great. Don't expect it to feel like a racing game. Did you have takes on just the vehicles?
I mean, I actually didn't drive much around in the vehicles because I found myself just so enthralled with exploring the world by foot, because it is so densely detailed and packed that there's so much going on every street corner. Like one seat in particular, I was just walking through and I hear music and turn to the left and go down this tiny alley, and it opens up into this big, huge courtyard with all these different stalls and shops and whatnot. And I was just kind of walking around, taking in the scenery. So I didn't drive a lot, but what I did drive, it seemed pretty fine. Like, I don't think it was anything to write home about, but it seemed to work pretty well.
Yeah. Oh, that's nice. Yeah. I don't envy those designers trying to figure out how to make a city that is supposed to feel like it has a history, different layers building on top of each other, different cultures, everything like that, but then not make it just a game design, game layout disaster. Like, it seems so hard, and because you want it to feel a little bit messy, but you don't want it to be a mess to navigate through. So I don't know how the hell they thread that needle.
Yeah, and what I saw too, there was a big emphasis on verticality too. Not so much like I got to giant buildings, but many of these areas I went to, I would make a left and walk up this staircase, and I'd follow a staircase and then take an elevator and end up in this new area that is not accessible from ground level, which sounds fine. You know, if you're listening to this, like, okay, that seems doable. But when you've got a quest objective up there and you don't know how to get up there, I feel like that could be an issue. Now, you know, when I played this a couple months ago, maybe they figured out how that works better. But when I was playing, I definitely got lost trying to figure out how to get up when, you know, the world design is so packed and dense.
Oh, that's going to be tricky. Leo, lock it in, baby. What is that Metacritic on Cyberpunk 2077? Let's say PC version.
91.
Why isn't it higher?
It's locked in. Some bugs hold back the game from reaching its true potential.
I think that's good. I think that's really good. Let's see. I think Witcher 3 is ridiculous. Let's see, Witcher 3 Metacritic. For PC, it's 93. I could see it. I'm going to lock in 89, where I think there's going to be a lot of 10s out there, and I think there's going to be a lot of people that are trying to really ding it and be like, it's kind of just a messy, big, overblown Deus Ex. I think there's going to be that weird backlash where people are just like, this isn't the next coming of Christ in games like people have been screaming about for 6 years now. I could see that. I don't know. Jake, do you have a prediction?
Yeah, right in the middle. I'm going to say 90. I was going to say 89, but I think I'll do 90.
So it's locked in. It's either 89, 90, or 91. We won't have any other way for Cyberpunk 2077. That's cool. Any other tiny details you wanted to share, Jake? I had no idea you were this intelligent when it came to this game.
I mean, there's more I could say, I guess, but I don't know. I wouldn't know where to begin.
Sure. You know what? That's fine. You made a video about the brain dance stuff, which is like their advanced VR simulation, hijacking your brain type of thing. Is that just lore background? Do you think it's going to be a big part of the game, is this simulation stuff?
I don't know if it'll be a big part of the game, but it seems like they've kind of positioned Braindance to be like this sort of detective mode that you'll have in this game. So in I think the first Night City Wire or whatever, they showed off some gameplay of that, of someone like rewinding a scene, like looking for audio sources and whatnot to pinpoint who killed someone. So that's kind of the impression I get. In like, I'm sure there'll be jokes about porn being a big deal in it, because, you know, whenever there's new tech, that's always the obvious use for it. So I imagine there'll be like porn jokes and whatnot, but I don't know how in-depth Braindance will be.
Right.
I hope they do some cool stuff with it, because the idea of the tech is pretty cool, and there's a pretty interesting history behind it. Like, originally it was used to reform prisoners by just having them re-experience their crime over and over and over again with increasingly worse consequences.
Oh my God.
And because you can essentially feel everything, like they would die, they would get put to death and whatnot, and like rehabilitation was like much quicker, obviously incredibly unethical, but you know, it's a ridiculous science fiction universe. So I'm curious to see what they do with it. They could do a lot of really interesting and creative quests around that.
And I wonder if they would ever tie into that or tie that whole braindance thing into like the multiplayer, which they say is a separate AAA production at this point, coming at 2022 at the earliest, but just something so they can get a little bit looser with the rules of the world if it's all just this braindance stuff, maybe.
Yeah, maybe you can play Cyberpunk in Cyberpunk's braindance.
Oh my God. Crazy. Hey.
I don't know what quarantine has done to my brain, but when you said 2022, I looked over at the data of my computer to see what year it was right now. See how far away that would be.
It'll kind of feel like, the days you've been experiencing for the last several months, it'll feel like more of those.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, just kind of a never-ending cycle.
Love those.
God, I don't want to be a real downer here, but I think it was on the Bombcast, but at some point they were talking about like E3, and then I think it was Gerstmann that's just like, well, of course there's not going to be an E3 next year. I was like, oh yeah. I guess like the odds of that being good to go in June, what, 40%? Realistically here?
Seems
If
pretty
that.
low, yeah.
Yeah.
God, I wonder, this is all relating to complicated vaccines and timelines and stuff, but I wonder if they'd be like, it's in August now, just to try and do something next year. Because we want to make it safe enough for you to go, Leo.
Yeah, I don't know. There'll be maybe a point where we all stop caring and just accept our fates.
Okay. Well, that seems fun too. That seems like you can make some sort of fun video segment.
Quietly acquiescing to our new lifestyles. I also wonder how much companies are just going to be like, I don't think we need E3 actually.
Yeah. I mean,
and whenever E3 tries to do their recruitment draft, people are just like, no, we're Nintendo, and like us releasing a trailer and everyone talking about us for a day and a half. I think that works for us really well, even though it infuriates fans all the time constantly.
We wanted to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, and then we found this thing called Twitter, and we just tweet out, buy a Mario game, and people do it. So I think we're set here. Yeah, it's a weird world.
Have you guys tested out like Parsec at all, which is that remote? I mean, it's usually used for gaming, but you can remote play games with this software on PC. We've been doing it a lot for demos and whatnot, and it works incredibly well. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of these, in-person events kind of change to that. Because, I mean, that's how I played Cyberpunk. I played it remotely.
Really? So it's just like a screen sharing thing that just has really low latency?
Yeah, it's like screen sharing that's designed for games.
Interesting. No, I haven't checked that out yet. I'm sure it's going to be a huge
I
part
think
of the
a lot of fighting games have actually used it. Like a lot of let's say gray market solutions for putting online into a lot of fighting games have actually worked out, and people say they prefer to like there are games with actual netcode that use Parsec instead because everyone plays there, and that's more popular and more efficient to play on.
Huh. Interesting. Bob Buell in the Backstage Pass watching this live along with other $10 supporters. Hello, everybody in the Backstage Pass. Leo, you might be into this. They just announced releasing on October 17th Streets of Kamurocho, which is a Streets of Rage Yakuza crossover that apparently is going to be free on Steam.
Huh.
Weird things. Thanks for
That's
that
so weird,
hot
yeah.
tip, Beaten Down, Brian. Oh, I'm sorry.
That sounds like something you would play inside of another Yakuza game.
Yeah. Maybe it'll be slipped into Yakuza 7 or something confusing. But Leo, you wanted to talk about VR stuff. You wanted to defend VR. What's been your VR journey? Have you always been into it? I remember you bought one, which was surprising, and I don't know if you trailed off at a certain point.
I definitely did. I was really excited about it. I got the Dev Kit 2, the Oculus Dev Kit 2. I split it with a friend, and just doing roller coasters and virtual theaters and stuff, which was kind of all you had back then, was still very exciting. And then when I got hired at Game Informer and had more money than I'd ever had in my life, I just bought an Oculus Rift on a whim, and it's great. I've always loved VR, but I've really fallen in love with it more during this quarantine. In these past few months, it's been like fully life-changing. And I don't know if I'm going to do a watch later about it at some point to really sum up my thoughts on it, but it's like getting into VRChat, which if I wanted to piss everyone off, I would have be my game of the year at the end of the year.
Really?
It is incredible. It's such a player-driven thing, right? That game has so many player-created worlds and games within it, like escape rooms, horror journeys, like roller coasters where you're shooting targets and stuff, and just going into that with friends who also have VR. I'm lucky enough to have a few friends who also have VR, and we do like VRChat meetups. And I describe it as emotionally indistinguishable from a day like at the amusement park with my friends.
What?
Just doing all these fun experiences of like going into this city where there's this grapple gun playground and you're just swinging around, hanging onto each other and just swinging in this trail of like 4 weird ass avatars and turning off nameplates. So it's like all presence. VR has that really strong sense of presence, and hearing proximity chat of like, I know my friend is over there. It's so immersive. There's this game called Murder, which is like a werewolf or whatever, where one person's the murderer, everybody's trying to find clues, one person's the detective, they get a gun, and it's just like this fun deception game that is added so much by you're all walking around this spooky mansion and trying to sneakily kill each other and hearing a scream from across the mansion and knowing where it was and trying to pinpoint who was over there just from like actually hearing it. It is truly, I've fallen in love with VR in a brand new way because of VR chat with friends. It's like fully not a gimmick at this point. It's fully like, I want it to be a part of my life forever, you know?
And how much of that is because of just lockdown? Do you think you would have given VR chat this much of a chance?
I don't know. I like to think I would, but maybe not. It's like being starved for human interaction and figuring out how fun it is to be just, even if you're not playing something, just all hanging out in like a VR chat bar server or meeting random people. We're normally just hanging out with each other, but you can just hop into public servers together and talk to fellow weirdos.
Oh, great. Jake, you took the plunge recently, right?
I got a Quest 1 a couple years ago, I think. I don't know, whenever they came out. And I just got a Quest 2 in the mail last night.
Nice.
So I played a little bit, but I was curious, Leo, have you played Half-Life Alyx? Did you give that a shot at all?
Yes, I actually reviewed that for Game Informer before I left. I gave it a 9. But yeah, I adore Half-Life Alyx, and that was my game of the year at the time and will still be high up. That game is great, and certainly like says a lot about where VR can go as far as cinematic, full AAA quality experiences.
Yeah, totally. Because I've had a Quest for a while, but I only played like Superhot and whatnot. And then with the Oculus Link, I tried out Half-Life Alyx, and I couldn't play it for long stretches of time because I just get a terrible headache. But it was excellent. Like it was probably my favorite game so far this year, and it really just sold VR to me. Like I was like, okay, yeah, like you're saying, this is where it can go, and I hope it does, because it was an experience unlike anything else in terms of gaming. Although now that you talk about VR chat, I really do want to try VR chat. I'll probably install that after this.
It just sounds
Please, you should.
It sounds like a super version of Rec Room, which is that free game that I really like just messing around in.
Exactly. That it made me foolish for all my times like talking about Rec Room, because VR chat is like, oh yeah, this is a better version. Except Rec Room has, dailies. It's still got some unique things going for it, but VR chat is like the creation tools are much more powerful.
Right.
And it really was like my lead into Phasmophobia, because those VR escape rooms, learning how much I loved doing co-op VR horror with my friends and like people getting picked off and like getting separated from your group and how isolating and scary that is. That made me so excited for Phasmophobia, which is kind of like a standalone spooky, VR chat with friends.
Yeah.
In a way.
Are you still playing that game?
Yeah, I was just playing it last night. I've unlocked everything, so we'll see how long I stick with it after that. But there's still like a few locations I haven't been to. You unlock bigger and bigger locations that are harder and harder to figure out. These giant, sprawling, like abandoned asylums.
Oh my God.
That have like 3 floors.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's weird really to see in this year in particular, like Sony not leaning back into VR stuff. Even with the PlayStation 5, it's like, well, you can use the older one, but the new PlayStation 5 camera won't work with the PSVR headset. Do you think they're just waiting for a big push for VR on PS5? Is that the strategy here?
Yeah, I don't know. I hope they're still planning on supporting it and just trying to figure out exactly where it's going. It seems like Oculus Quest 2 is going to be the new standard set. From everything I've heard about that, it's been super exciting as far as the fidelity of the display and everything.
Yeah. And I do think it is telling, they took off that team just to make Astro's Playroom instead of making the big attempt to sell, the PSVR headset for PS5. Maybe they can work on that now and jump back to the world of VR, but who knows?
Yeah, I wonder how much of it was just, the pandemic kind of telling people to kind of scale back anything you're doing that isn't super high priority, especially for Sony launching a new console. It would just be like, well, you might have been working on a VR thing, but because we need everyone to work on the like high priority stuff, you guys are going to lock down and make a PS5 launch title for us. And then maybe once this is all clears up and we can actually work in tandem, like in an office, you can go back to making VR stuff. Because I think beyond Alex, I think Iron Man VR was the only kind of hyped up VR release, and that didn't seem to make much of a splash.
Yeah, what an odd release. Yeah. Thomas Hoster writes in for an early community question saying, glad to see you talking about VR here. One of the major talking points with VR is what must-play games are there. VR sellers. One thing often overlooked is VR's involvement in the sim community. Flight, space, racing. Seems like Squadrons is one of the more mainstream games to rope people into the VR space sim experience. Have any of you had experience with any of the VR sim experiences? I use VR every time I turn on my race sim cockpit in games like Assetto Corsa for mountain drifting, Drift Rally 2 for off-road jumps, and Project Cars 2 iRacing for circuit simulation. Thomas, you're much cooler than we are. That does sound great. But has anybody done any sim stuff?
I did Star Wars Squadrons last week, which, isn't full sim, but that was pretty cool. I only did one mission though, and it was like, okay, it was too much spinning around. I gotta go back to just a monitor.
Yeah, I'd like to do it. Like, I had such a good time with that first Project Cars for actually getting like a racing wheel and getting right up to the TV. So I feel like I would be gaga if I actually got the full VR setup for playing these games. But I haven't given it its due, Thomas. I'm very sorry. Sorry to let you down, buddy.
Yeah, I've been curious about Elite Dangerous.
Yeah.
VR. That seems like the ideal, kind of what I was looking for in Star Wars Squadrons with VR, since they don't let you use the touch controllers. Elite Dangerous seems to be much more up my alley that way of reaching around and fiddling with the controls.
Right. And then Jeff Enright asked the classic, what do you think will be necessary for VR to proliferate throughout consumer culture? Price, technological advancement, sensory technology, general acceptance? What are we missing here? Is it just at its level it's going to be at?
I think it just kind of needs time. I think for people, for more devices to get released, for it to, I don't think it's going to be the thing that everyone thought it was, which was like, hey, as soon as the good VR device is out, it's just going to be the latest thing, because it is so kind of hard to get into monetarily. Yeah. So I think it's just going to take time for people to develop more convenient solutions, like just the idea of being able to play Half-Life Alyx on a Quest without having to do some kind of like side loading hack or something, which I think people have been able to figure out, I think would help a lot. But I think people just need, more like cheaper solutions, and just time for people to say like, oh, this is sticking around. You're okay to invest in it, and you can kind of, and there being enough experiences for people to just be able to have one in their lives without feeling like, is this a waste of money?
Right.
Yeah, I think with time it'll come. Most of the thing that gets people interested in it is trying someone else's, so as the game of telephone continues, of people trying each other's Oculuses, which is probably slowed down in this quarantine.
I would imagine.
I think the Quest 2 in particular is definitely the right move, because for me, at work, I've messed around with a bunch of different headsets, and while I think they all look better, the price and like setting up sensors and all the wires and all that kind of stuff was a huge turnoff. Like, I don't really want that in my apartment. That being said, the Quest for me has been incredible because I can bring it wherever I want. I can set it up wherever I want. Sure, I'm not getting that high fidelity that I might with the Index. But that being said, like, I mean, the new Quest starts at $299, and it's a good package, it's way more enticing. I showed my parents that, and like, they ended up buying one, and everyone I've showed it to, they're like, oh yeah, I got to get one of these too. And I think that's really how you sell VR, is like, you get it away from the PC.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. More breaking news here for everybody. Apparently Sega also announced something that's so cool. They're releasing a prototype of a new Golden Axe game they were making and then canceled. And it's called Golden Axed. And they're releasing it on Steam on October 18th.
Is that also free, or do you have to pay money for that?
I assume it's free. Yeah, they say it's a thank you for the fans. That's so insane. So it's available Oh, until October 19th. So they're just putting these up for these like brief little windows of just freaky thank yous for Sega's 60th anniversary. That's so strange, but I love that idea of just releasing prototypes. Why the hell not? You got nothing to lose.
Yeah.
Weird stuff. Hey, Jake, thank you for joining us, sir.
Thank you so much for having me. This is a lot of fun.
Oh, good. Thank you for joining us, Leo's cat, as well, for the video viewers. Jake, what do you want to point people towards at GameSpot?
Check out the Cyberpunk lore videos. If what I talked about didn't make any sense and you want more, we've got a bunch of videos and we have new ones every Saturday.
Wow.
Other than that, every Wednesday we do GameSpot, or every Friday we also put up GameSpot After Dark, which is GameSpot's podcast with Lucy James, myself, Callie Pligge, Timur Hussein, Jean-Luc Seipke. Be sure to check that out. It's a lot of fun.
Awesome. Hey, before you go, could we pick your genius mind to figure out the best time to release a YouTube video? What is the best time of the day? Are you big into analytics?
I'm supposed to be.
What have you learned throughout your years at GameSpot about, okay, this works, this doesn't? Give us the basics here.
And don't trick us. If you say 30 a.m., we're going to know you don't really mean that.
Yeah, what about time to release a video? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Typically, I feel like we try to put our big stuff up in the morning.
Okay.
Like on YouTube. Like we do 8 a.m. Pacific a lot. Usually when I'm working on something that is taking a long time and something that I want people to see, usually I'm told we'll schedule it for 8 a.m. Pacific. That being said, the YouTube algorithm is like, I have no clue. Absolutely no idea.
Looking at analytics, it looks like around like 1 p.m. is our peak viewership. And so I assume we should launch things then. And tell me if I'm insane, Jake, but what I like doing for launching videos on our YouTube channel is I'm convinced that if you release a video at like 10 a.m., 8 a.m., there's a bunch of trailers from companies and gaming nonsense that's released at that exact same time. So I always release Game Informer's videos at the 15, like 8:15, 10:15, so that in the queue we can be a little bit higher. Do you think that's insane?
No, I think that works.
Okay.
Why are you still releasing Game Informer's videos?
Did I say Game Informer?
Yeah.
Look, I did that for 9 years. You got to give me one slip up. MinnMax, everybody. YouTube.com/MinnMax show. Please don't forget.
Yeah, my video that blew up the most was released on like a 3 p.m. on a Sunday and then blew up 3 days later. So I have no idea what to do.
It's so
like weekends, I've heard are good, like morning weekends, just because that gives people all day to check it out, as opposed to like on a 8 a.m. on a weekday. Like if people miss it, they may not see it during the workday until the end of the day.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It like gets to the point where it's just like, I don't know. Like it's just YouTube algorithm. If you release a video that the YouTube algorithm seems to like, then I feel like that's the key.
Yeah. I've been worrying a lot lately about click-through rate and how important that is, and having such a variety of content.
The algorithm for sure.
Yeah. But like, you know, I'm a little bit jealous, Leo, even of your personal YouTube channel, because like that is focused as hell. And it's great to have the variety at MinnMax, but there's a lot of people that are like, I'm not into Better Quest, or I'm not into this. And it's like, oh, that might end up hurting us just in terms of the algorithm. And so it's frustrating, but we want to have a varied channel. We're doing this for the Patreon supporters in the end. So YouTube be damned, but it is things that I've been wrestling with lately. Do you know, Jake, what the #1 video on GameSpot's YouTube channel is?
Yeah, I believe it is. I think it's like 18 million views for like a Black Ops Nuketown live stream or something like that. I don't know why that got a bunch of views. It's either that or it could be a Witcher 3 trailer, A Night to Remember.
Oh, interesting.
It's one of the two. If you go to the, I'll look it up now.
Please. Do you guys still do that? Do you just take the trailers and just re-upload them real quick?
We do, but we have a separate channel for that now. So we try not to put them on our main channel anymore.
Just because you don't want to spam people?
Yeah. Okay, no. So it looks like 17 million views is the Heavy Rain Quantic Dream tech demo 8 years ago.
Wow.
All right, so
and
more
then
of
it's
that.
The Witcher 1 at 14 million views. I don't understand where the views come from. And Dead Rising 3 cinematic trailers, 12 million views. I don't know.
That's so
I don't know who watches this stuff.
Leo, you want to write that down for a future watch later? The Heavy Rain tech demo? Just want to repurpose that in some ways. I think it could be huge for us. Awesome. Well, hey, Jake, thanks for joining us. Thanks for being an expert on so many games and Cyberpunk in particular, man.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. And you're welcome to clap out. Oh my God, he's going to do it. All right, now with Jake out of the picture, we can get down to what really matters. our Patreon supporters. Which reminds me, Serial, do you know how this whole thing operates?
I'm completely lost. I don't know. You could have possibly hinted at that. I believe, though, it's Patreon.
That's right. Patreon.com/MinnMax2Ns. Thanks to everybody that listens to the show and supports us. We really appreciate it. I love talking to folks. Every new supporter I always DM back and forth with to figure out how they found us, what they want from us in the future, and it's always an insightful way to start my morning. So thanks to all new supporters at patreon.com/MinnMax2Ns, and thanks to our biggest supporters like the Bam Box. It says, hello, MinnMaxers. We are so thankful for the support you've shown us so far, and we're really excited about the box we've been able to get you next. Yes, the new Gamer Box has just gone on sale, and it might be the best one yet. This month's franchises are Super Mario Brothers, Portals 2. Sorry, Super Mario Brothers, Portal 2, Simpsons Bart's Nightmare, and Dead by Daylight. Also, with Halloween coming, we decided to celebrate 30 years of the Simpsons Treehouse of Horror by doing a Simpsons pin set crossover between our Gamer Box, Geek Box, and Horror Box. It's our biggest crossover set in 5 years. And on top of that, the autograph in this box is one of the most iconic characters ever in gaming, a true grail for any collector. We can't wait for you to see what it is. Be sure to reserve your October Gamer Box at thebambox.com and then hit us up on Facebook or Twitter to become a part of the BAM community. Thank you, Bambox, for supporting MinnMax and getting a plug on the podcast. Also, thanks to our dear friends at I Am 8-Bit. They want you to know that they are selling the Ori Collector's Edition on Switch, Xbox One, and PC. It is a beautiful transforming display case. It's got a glow-in-the-dark finish. It's got a stained glass style art piece inside of it. There's a field guide for the flora and fauna of Ori, sketchbook zine featuring rarely seen production art, collectible art card set, hard enamel glow-in-the-dark pin, digital download cards, physical editions of Ori and the Will-o'-the-Wisp and Ori the Blind Forest featuring exclusive reversible cover art. This thing is awesome. Thank you to I Am 8-Bit, and you can support them and support us by checking out everything in their online store. Everything that's under $100, you can use a promo code to get 10% off. And this week it is all caps MinnMax Gang. So MinnMax-Gang. And that is in honor of what they're giving away to the Question of the Week winner this week on the MinnMax Show, and that is...
I'm saying Gang Beasts.
Good call. The Gang Beasts vinyl soundtrack, which is a very sweet production. So we're going to choose our favorite question of the week, whatever makes the show better. And people submit these questions if they support us at any tier on Patreon. We're going to choose our favorite, and then I Am 8-Bit will ship this out. Thanks to everybody that submitted a question, and for I Am 8-Bit. All right. Pseudonymous Joe writes in and says, apropos of nothing in particular, how big is too big for a video game console? Are we there? Are we at the too big stage now?
Yes.
I think we're going to find out.
I'm going to.
Do you think there's anyone who gets a PS5 and says, no, this is too big, I'm taking it back?
No, but I bet there are going to be a lot of people that buy it and then get it home and have that moment of trying to fit it into their entertainment center and going, this is going to be a mess.
Yeah. It's so weird because the moment I saw that console, I thought like, oh, that's the console that's going to get heavily redesigned by like this time, let's say 2022, when they release like the Slim or the Pro or whatever. That console feels ripe for like, here's like the actual version that you'd want in your entertainment system.
It's nowhere near as funky, but there is a certain like original DS quality to kind of just like the clunkiness of the PS5. It's just begging for a redesign.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I can't pass too much judgment because my PC, I could put my mattress on, there's a ways to go before they catch up with the size I'm currently putting up with.
Right.
Did you just come up with a stream idea? Is that you just spend an hour sleeping on top of your PC mattress?
We have Extra Life coming up. Let's get silly and sleepy. Darkfish Days says there's been suggestions lately about buying a PC. Oh, look at this. Instead of a next-gen console. But in my mind, beyond graphics, modularity, and variety of games, the debate between PC and console comes down to me for desk versus couch. When someone says play on PC, I hear play at desk. Am I being too reductionist? Yes, you are. You should get out of that mindset. There's these things called HDMI cables. You could just run it very simply over to a TV, and then you don't have to play PC games on your desk. I hope that's not stopping anybody, because, I've had a PC hooked up to my TV for a gazillion years. Leo, what's your setup like?
I have a TV as my second monitor, so when I want to, I can throw something on it and plug in a controller and have a bit more of a console experience, kick my feet up and what have you. But I've been thinking about getting a Steam Link, for my living room, just because when I'm playing co-op with my girlfriend, we like to have more of a couch experience when we're gaming. So it leads to a lot of Switch games lately, but it would really open our options up if I could cast out there. But I can't run a HDMI around my whole house like that.
Yeah. I had a Steam Link in box, Leo, but believe it or not, I was moving recently and I don't know where it is now. I think I gave it to friend of the show, Dave Klepp, but I'm not entirely sure. But if he doesn't want it, I'm sure we could just give it to you because it was on sale a while ago. Yeah. It was
This is like
a joke.
something people should have. I think I ordered a Steam Link at one point when they were like $5 and they were having those big blowout sales, and it just never appeared. I think in their move, they just don't know where it is. Maybe they also gave it to friend of the show, Dave Klepp.
I think, he's been collecting a lot of junk recently, yeah.
What are you going to do? Class action lawsuit us about it? $5?
Come at us, we dare you. I am debating when to upgrade my setup. Like I have a cute little cozy setup here in the MinnMax studio / my new living room / gaming room, but I still have like a 1080 TV. And at some point, I'm probably going to have to upgrade all this stuff. I'm going to feel like a fool playing all these next-gen games on 1080, aren't I?
Maybe.
Do you guys have 4K TVs?
I think that's what the Series S would be for, right? If you if you just want to run those games at the highest possible frame rate on a 1080, I think S seems totally capable of that. But I guess if you don't have a TV, like this is deal season, right? I'm sure there'll be a lot of sales on like a bunch of stores for fairly cheap 4K TVs.
Yeah, I should probably upgrade that stuff. And then at what point do I have to get a new HDMI cable and stuff? The 2.1 thing.
2.1?
Yeah.
I mean, you can just buy it with your TV. I don't think they're that expensive, but I might be wrong about that.
Okay. Brendan Brett writes in and says, I've decided to wait a year before upgrading my console to next gen so all the bugs can get worked out and I have more games to choose from. But now I have this next gen money burning a hole in my pocket. What's a fun way to spend that money? Upgrade my PC? Somehow being convinced to jump into VR? Hoping for some fun and irresponsible suggestions.
That Quest 2 is looking very reasonable.
Quest 2 would be fun. Maybe you could like split it. I think, is there something about with the Quest 2, if they're inside your bubble or however you're managing this lockdown, I think getting a Quest 2 and like splitting it with a couple of friends, wouldn't that be the way to go, Leo? Everybody chips in $100, $70, and you can just pass it around because it's great, but it's not exactly everyday gaming, right?
Yeah, I mean, again, in non-COVID times, maybe roommates or something, but
right.
Yeah, I think that's totally like a great first step into VR. Like splitting that up is nothing. When me and my friend split it, it was like $400 a piece. Oh my God, crazy. But if you're looking for something irresponsible, friend of the show, producer Amy, Suriel knows her well, producer of MinnSnax. She bought a scooter, which is shockingly fun, and it was $300. And so if you're not living in a place where the winter is really going to crush you, just getting a fast, cute little scooter, probably the most fun you can have with $300, right? You mean like the ones they rent out with the app, or ones you sit on?
I guess the ones that they rent out. Actually, just having one of those ready to go.
Those are super fun. A lot of people are too good for them, and maybe they have fair reasons about when they clog up the sidewalk or whatever. But those are a blast. Yeah, I love those. Why are people anti-fun? Jonathan Fenn, but please leave a comment below, everybody watching on YouTube. Let Brendan know what to spend his money on for $300, please. Jonathan Fenn writes in and says, hey, CLCs, I just finished listening to the deepest dive for Super Mario 64. Thank you for listening to that. It was a fun time. And it got, by the way, we did something diabolical where I had, the community likes ranking things. They're obsessed with it. When they have these big, in the Discord, different formats, different ways to rank different things. Sometimes we read it on the show. We ranked the deepest dives recently. Like, of all the deepest dives that we've released, what do you think is your favorite? And it was very interesting to go through the results. Final Fantasy VII Remake was number 1 by a mile. And then it was Chrono Trigger. And then I think Super Mario 64 was the third down that list. So please check it out. It was a very fun time. I think I'd put Super Mario 64 above Chrono Trigger, but that's just me. Anyways,
This got me thinking, watching the Super Mario 64 Deepest Dive. People often say that when you stop and think about Mario, it's a very surreal concept. Talking mushrooms, giant evil turtles, magic penguin suits, etc. And I think the same could be said of a lot of retro games, like Sonic, for instance. My question is, do you think this is purely a result of hardware limitations, as abstract shapes are more easily readable in pixel form, and has the age of completely surreal game concepts ended as graphics become more realistic?
We're not going to see anything like Bugsnax anytime soon.
I'm sick of all these games being the same. That's a great example, Leo. Yeah, there's still plenty of trippy, weird stuff out there. But I think he's right. There's something about that idea of, looking back on those older games, just being like, what were these designers on? It's like, well, were they really all just high, or was it just they were trying to make the best square they could?
Right. I think you need a lot of bright colors to make stuff at that resolution stand out. So obviously, like making things more fantastical and simple. Like, this is a cloud that you don't need to understand anything else about, like about this world other than like, here are very simple shapes, and how do we contextualize very simple shapes? It's just like, okay, these are just blocks. These are like, here's a very rudimentary castle. I also think though that they just happen to have good timing in that around the time that some things like the NES were coming out, there were a ton of like children's cartoons that had proliferated by television, of just like people were just obsessed with these like Saturday morning cartoons, and so making games I think was still seen as something that were for kids, right? We didn't have a lot of like mature games yet, so I think people were like, oh yeah, just tie it into this like cartoonish kind of thing, and then make there were a lot of licensed games based on Ninja Turtles and like Home Alone or whatever kids thing was popular at that time. So I think it was really easy to just combine those kind of very simple abstract ideas with children's cartoons.
Yeah, and it was funny. There's an article I think we talked about on the podcast where is the NES, I think like tech lead, something like that. I forget his exact title, lead programmer. But he was just a very frank guy. And he's like, basically with a lot of those old games, we just kind of like took a lot of stuff from anime, and then everybody in the West thought we were geniuses, but we just totally ripped off a bunch of animes that we've been consuming our entire lives, or just weird ideas from manga and stuff. So everybody just sees those early games as wildly creative when there's no doubt about it. But a lot of those ideas they were saying were like, we just pulled it from anime, everybody.
Yeah, I was trying to find a quote I had written down from a couple of years ago from a Ubisoft level designer that I thought was really accurate about how you need limitations for creativity. Mm-hmm. Like you need boundaries to work within to truly like form something meaningful. And I think that's probably like, it is a mix of the limitations and that breeding creativity.
Yeah, I think a lot of my favorite games are like games that make a lot of interesting choices, and so you're more pushed to make like the right choice if you have more constrictions around what you're doing, right? Yeah. Versus like something like if you have the ability to render the entire world, right, and then like make it super vermicile and make it look exactly like the real world, then like you are making the choice to do that. But there's also like, well, we're doing this because this is how it looks in the real world. We're making this because like this is a logical train of thought, versus like, well, we have to choose between like a jump animation and a slide or something, and so we've decided to make it like, imagine something like Bionic Commando, right, which had the choice of like, there is no jumping in this game. Instead, you have to use this claw to move, and that's something that makes that game stand out. Versus if they would making that game now, yeah, of course you can jump because that's something that's easily doable, right?
Yeah. God, I'm trying to think about recent-ish games that fit that bill as just being a surreal concept, like most surreal recent games. I think of like Everything, the game that Double Fine published, where you just listen to amazing Alan Watts philosophical quotes as you control a tree and a deer and all this different stuff. That's pretty surreal.
Virginia,
interesting little story experience. Yeah, jump cuts. Fantasia a couple years ago, but that game is pretty weird.
Yeah, I think 8-Bat is pretty surrealist, and its art style and soundtrack and stuff. It makes some really interesting choices around like what it chooses to not make look realistic and go for that art style for sure.
Yeah.
Even Hotline Miami being like something that was made within the limitations of the game maker engine. Like doing as much as they could with that.
I guess in a way too, Minecraft is a pretty surreal nightmare, isn't it? Like that's a trippy, weird thing.
Yeah.
I don't know about nightmare.
Sometimes.
More like a dream come true.
Have any of you ever beat Minecraft?
No.
I haven't either. I feel like I should do that at some point for a game that I love that much. I need to go back to it. And also, I played a majority of Minecraft by far on my PS4, and now it just seems insane. Like, I should get back into the PC version of Minecraft at some point in MinnMax's future. I think it would be really fun. Noel, I think he's the first Noel ever write in. Up top. We broke the cameras. Noel writes in and says, "Hey, MinnMax, my son got me help. My son got me and his mom playing Fortnite with him pretty much daily. That's so sweet. We do duos or squads, sometimes creative. It's fun to play as a family, and we get a couple wins here and there. I could do a lot better, I'm sure, but I don't really want to put any time into getting better. I have no interest in getting good at it because I'm a filthy casual and I'm good with it. So what games are you fine just being okay at? Something you like, but don't want to take time to get to the next skill level."
I kind of think to some degree that's where I'm at with Destiny, where there is sort of like it's not like a huge esports thing, but there are things in Destiny called sweaties where people will just go into private lobbies and try to play really intense games. Like I don't even do a lot of the Trials of Osiris stuff, which is like their most competitive mode where you kind of have to win like games in a row in order to progress. And so like I just don't really care about being good in the Crucible, and they make they don't make you care about that stuff. They just want you to play more games. But I think there is a part of me that does sometimes want to sit down and say like, okay, I want to get really good at like Destiny multiplayer or get really good at raid stuff. But I think I want that game to be I don't want that game to be intense outside of like, okay, we're trying to coordinate this thing, and we got this raid done, and that was really cool. But I don't want to like top the leaderboards or like actively think about my performance in Destiny a lot of the time.
Yeah, you just want it to be the chill game.
Yeah, I want to be a fake casual gamer when it comes to Destiny stuff.
Right on.
Yeah, it'd be nice.
For me, it's Hearthstone. It's
yeah.
That's CCG, and a lot of others like it. It becomes so much about everybody has the same pre-made decks they find online, and you're just fighting the same oppressive decks the whole time. And it's like the joy of Hearthstone, when I was finding a lot of joy in it, was like building my own deck from scratch and finding what I thought was a good balance, and then winning one, losing a few, getting a sense of what cards I wasn't using or getting use out of, and like swapping them out and trying to build the best deck that way. But it's like you can't be competitive unless you use the exact one you should be using.
Yeah.
And even then, like when I was playing Gwent, like after I reviewed it, there was definitely this push to like, oh, you should like find out what the best decks are. And even when I put one together that was like, oh, here's like a recommended like build that was played at this major tournament, there's always this push of like, well, you have like what is the best deck, right? Like, why aren't you winning? Like, so there's always this push to be like to be competitive in a lot of games that I think ends up pushing me away sort of because I'm not living up to the expectations that I feel like I should be at immediately, right? Even though that's not how it works.
Yeah, like 1v1ing friends in Hearthstone is how it will always be the best to me for that reason.
MacDac writes in and says, "Hey all, World of Warcraft is on the cusp of a new expansion, but between WoW and 14, there don't seem to be a ton of new MMOs. Why do you think the MMO genre has declined? What could be done to revitalize it? Perhaps Dreamhaven can create the WoW killer we didn't know we wanted." Dreamhaven, by the way, Mike Morhaime from Blizzard split off and created a new group of studios with a crazy amount of Blizzard leads. We didn't talk about it too much on the show, but it's a very cool project and we wish them well. But also, God, what was the studio that a couple years ago, Rob Pardo from Blizzard, he also created, Bonfire Studios. They're also working on stuff with a lot of former Blizzard talent that they haven't revealed yet. But anyways, why do you think the MMO genre has declined? Does anybody have thoughts?
We should say, obviously, there are exceptions that people will want to point out. Like Final Fantasy 14 is, like, new content is doing well.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, there's still a community that loves Elder Scrolls Online, which is amazing to see. That game was a little bit rocky out of the gate, but, the companies that stick with it, it's paid off a couple times so far.
Yeah, I think there's like a level of people have their MMOs they like. If they play MMOs, they're in one for their entire life. Right. Having a bunch of friends who are into WoW and into Final Fantasy 14, it's, a disease that they have and is incurable. not going to be cured by another MMO coming along,
Yeah. I think when it comes to new ones, though, I also think it's a money thing, right? Because I think the appeal that brought so many people to MMOs is, you can get them to pay you $15 a month or whatever. That's infinite money, right? And so I think people ended up finding more lucrative ways, like loot boxes and stuff and free to play, that ended up being better for revenue in the long run. Like, I'm not saying like that's objectively true, but I'm guessing like something like a gacha game, something like Genshin Impact, or like, loot boxes ended up making more money for people. And so people have shifted to games that work with that, versus, why limit it to $15 a month when we can make you give us $100 a day,
Make you give us. Yeah, it's true.
There's something to MMOs having a impression of being hard to get into for people. Like they seem like the highest level of complexity of game genres sometimes. Certainly when you're talking about like the things you have to know to get into an end game raid and any of them.
Yeah. Mark Ramirez writes in. He says, "Hey, Ben and the CLCs, based on the previous discussion of what's left to wish for, I have one more thing." Yes, please. By the way, I was thinking of one more thing as well. After that episode, I was like, it's so nitpicky, but I still want 3 ports on Switch. Did we talk about Chrono Trigger on Switch? I forget if we brought it up on that list, but that's up there. Also, I want Plants vs. Zombies 1 on Switch. EA, they're releasing Need for Speed Hot Pursuit, that remaster. That's coming out on Switch. That's great. I'm glad they're getting into the remaster game, but do you know anybody that owns a Switch that wouldn't buy Plants vs. Zombies 1? It just seems like a 100% retention rate, right?
Yeah.
If they ever
and
did
in that arena, a new Peggle.
Yeah.
Or a Peggle for mobile that isn't Peggle Blast, one of the worst games of all time.
Peggle put you on blast, buddy. But then the other one is I really still want XCOM Enemy Unknown on Switch. I know XCOM 2 is on there, but I like Enemy Unknown more, and I feel like it would run a little bit better. I'd be more into that. Anyways, Mark Ramirez says, I have one more thing that I want. Ken Levine's next game. It's been 7+ years since BioShock Infinite. He skipped the entire generation. That is crazy to think about. So time to pick some dates. What year does he announce something? What year does it come out? So, okay, after BioShock Infinite released, they took the Irrational Studio and compacted it down, and Ken Levine basically said, I want some of my leads to stay, but these hundreds of other developers, I can't maintain that. And so this compressed version of Irrational became Ghost Story Games. And Ken Levine, back in 2014, was talking about, we are working on a game about narrative Legos, a systemic approach to game design. And then since then, he's just brought it up a couple times here and there. We talked to him on the Game Informer show, and he actually said a lot. And he talked about how it's a sci-fi game, I believe first person, he said. And then he said that it deals a lot with just the nature of humanity and AI. So getting back to some of the themes from System Shock 2. So, I mean, we know a lot of those beats, but what year does he announce what this game is? Does anybody have a guess?
Next year. I think we see some info about it.
I think you're right. I'm trying to think about like 2K's lineup. Ooh. Would they, I know they're still building up, was it Cloud Spire Games? I forget the BioShock studio. But would that be confusing to be pushing the new BioShock and Ken Levine's game at the same time? I wonder if they'd want to stagger it. Maybe do Ken Levine's game first if BioShock's going to take this long.
If it's also a smaller project, I could see Ken going first. I could even maybe see an announcement at like the Game Awards. Aren't they kind of tight a little bit? Him and Keeley, don't they have some relationship?
Keeley is tight with everybody. I don't know why you'd insinuate that he's not, Suriel.
He's not tight with me
yet.
Oh, okay. Well,
he'll call you up.
I'm waiting for my email.
Why doesn't Jeff Keeley ever call us?
Yeah, we could make some sort of announcement at the Game Awards.
We could come up with something. We could announce a Deepest Dive. We're doing
yeah.
We have an Oregon Trail documentary, Mr. Keeley. I could see next year too. I could see that coming around. And then what year does it come out?
2024.
Wow.
Okay, let's split the difference. It's coming
and
out.
It will change gaming forever.
Okay, great. Leo, you seem to be into this idea of a more systemic approach to narrative, stuff like that. Are you interested in this project?
Yeah, I haven't heard that much about it, to be honest, but yeah, that kind of stuff, it definitely intrigues me. Like really trying to see what we can do with this damn old medium we're reporting on. You know?
Hey, I hear you there. Matt Robinson writes in, says, hey, gang. Hello?
Hello.
Leo, say hi to Matt.
I don't know, Matt.
Just say hi to him. You don't need to know somebody to say hi to them.
Just shake his hand. You don't have to hug him. Just shake his hand.
Yeah.
Hey, Matt. Nice to meet you. I'm Leo from the MinnMax show.
Leo, just kiss Matt. You don't need to know him. Just kiss him.
Come here, Matt.
Anyways, he says, I'm currently on my second playthrough of Ghost of Tsushima, which got me wondering, what is your favorite example of petting an animal in a game? Heavy petting in a game.
Nintendogs.
Oh,
good, yeah.
Correct. Moving on. I mean, that's got to be number one pet. I mean, that is the
You
pet
train a
game.
dog, yeah.
I want them to put that system in other games. That robust of a petting system where you're scratching behind the ears and rubbing the tummies and whatnot. You know, every other game is tied for second.
You want
You
to
just press triangle and you pet them.
Yeah. You know what's pretty dumb, Leo? Is that entire robust petting system in Nintendogs? It's just a bunch of numbers that they put into a computer. And
What?
Isn't that weird to think about?
I never had that dog.
No, Leo, those were numbers. That wasn't a puppy.
My Nintendo doesn't love me? Is that what you're saying?
If numbers can love you, then he do. Yeah, I was going to say Last Guardian. It seems cliche, but Pet and Trico in that game is great. And I went and looked at gameplay footage for that game again, and it was just like this. I got strangely nostalgic over a game that I just played 4 years ago, you know, but it just feels like it was this surreal experience that I don't reflect on enough. But God, that game has a lot of aspects that are so cool about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cyril, have you ever pet an animal?
Yes?
That's cool. Do you guys have like a go-to response to animals when you walk by them on the sidewalk or something?
Keep on keeping on. I say that.
I always just, whenever I see a dog on the sidewalk, or like I did a lot of hiking this last weekend in Duluth, and every dog on the trail, I'll always just go, hey pup, and then put my hand down. Like, oh, if it wants to lick me or sniff or whatever, that's fine. But I realized that's probably confusing because maybe they think that I'm giving it a treat every time. Maybe that's why all these dogs keep following me on those trails. I gotta stop that. Ryan writes in and says, hello. We have we have game remasters that provide the same game with updated character models, a la Final Fantasy VIII, for example. Do you think we'll ever see this in CG animated movies? Could we get a Toy Story remastered with character models from 4?
I think Disney would love to do a quote unquote live action remake of Toy Story 1 and would eventually do that, but it would be more about like Lego movie style, making it look like the toys are really hopping around.
Right.
More than just a remaster, until probably 5 years from now, they'll realize, oh, we could just remaster our movies and it'd be even less work.
But I don't know if that's true. So video games, you have the models there. You can upgrade that tech. You go back to the tech for Toy Story 1. That's literally typing in ones and zeros. Like, it's not just like, you know, I know no remaster is easy, but I think video games, it is a little bit easier when you have that skeleton. But I don't even know if you could get a computer to read those animations.
To be honest, I could do it, Hanson. It's called motion tracking in After Effects. You put the new model over the point on Buzz Lightyear, and you just have it follow in T-pose across the whole thing.
I smell a watch later. Leo Vader's Toy Story remastered.
4K.
Yeah. So I would like to see it. I would imagine that they will do it within 6 years.
Yes.
But I think that's a tough trailer for Disney to make. Don't you think?
How do you mean?
Just to like, hey, watch Toy Story. And then they have a little transition to be like, doesn't it look better?
No.
Or is that an easy trailer to make?
They'll fart that out
But
in 5 seconds.
Like a Valhalla NPC.
They have that video. They're just waiting for it to export, actually.
But so they just announced like, hey, we're prioritizing streaming now. That's our first priority. And so I wonder if the Toy Story Remastered would be great for getting folks to a theater, I think. I don't know. Does it have the same impact of on your small screen streaming? You can watch a new version of Toy Story. Would that really make people subscribe to Disney Plus? I don't know.
I don't know. I think you're right that it would be enough of a thing for them that they'd want to make it a big theater experience, after the success of Lion King, the #1 animated movie of all time, box office wise.
I feel bad I haven't seen that new movie. Lion King's one of my favorite movies of all time. It's like
I don't think anyone's been like super crazy about that remake though, right? I don't think
nobody has. James Earl Jones, I think, said yippee once about it, and that was the most.
How did that sound like?
I think it went a little something like this. Yippee. Ryan writes in, Nick L writes in and says, there's just not enough Monster Hunter talk on this podcast. We just got a full trailer for Monster Hunter the film, and it continues to look not great. That said, I really want to see it. He's wondering if there's ever been something that you know is not going to be great, but you want to see. I think Monster Hunter fits that bill. Did anybody else watch that trailer?
I watched the international trailer. I didn't watch the.
Oh, la-di-da. Oh,
I don't know.
Your French
I don't know
friends.
if those are different, but mine had Spanish subtitles.
Oh, fancy.
But English dialogue. That seems like it'll be fine.
Yeah,
I don't know.
It looks like Stargate meets Godzilla, where they're like, oh, we're transported to another world. It's a sand world, and now there's crazy monsters here. I think that seems fun. I'm on board for that. It's not going to be a good movie, just to be very clear.
I mean, the monsters look good, I think. I don't think they look like total garbage, which is sort of what I was expecting, I guess. But I hadn't watched a lot of the recent Resident Evils.
Yeah.
So I was kind of going in with very low expectations of what those monsters would actually look like. And I feel like they pulled them off okay. Yeah. The premise is kind of weird because it doesn't have a lot of like the kind of fantastical flair of Monster Hunter. It just looks like military dudes are transported to a realm that looks almost exactly the same as Earth, except there's monsters there. There's a guy dressed as a monster hunter for some reason, even though it doesn't feel like it fits in that world. But I don't know. It'll probably be dumb fun, right?
Yeah. I think so.
Me and my dad independently saw Now You See Me, that magician movie. And it came up in conversation and we were both talking about how obscenely dumb it is. And we ended up seeing Now You See Me 2 in theaters.
Oh my God.
And it was fun having that shared experience.
Oh, that's sweet. And now you can see.
Do you think
each
it's
other.
better? Do you think it's better?
It was more entertaining.
The second one?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Adam Moran writes in and says, not a question, but as a fellow former Animorphs obsessive, there is no former. There's only current and lifelong Animorphs obsession.
We're always anamorphing in our hearts.
I thought Ben might want to know that a graphic novel adaptation of the first Animorphs book was just released, and it's actually pretty damn good. Not sure how often they plan to release, but right now the plan is 1-to-1 adaptations of each book, so they aren't cutting much out. That does sound cool. I think I'd like to read that. Thank you for your Animorphs report, Adam Moran. We welcome an Animorphs report every week on the MinnMax show. Raymond Gutierrez says, with Animal Crossing's fall update last week and Destiny 2's Festival of the Lost starting today, what are some of your favorite holiday events in video games?
Dota 2 a long time ago had an event called the Grieveling, which was this really weird, dumb thing where you just played as whatever Dota hero, and the river, which is what bisects the map basically between one faction and the other, had frozen over, and so when you went on the river, you'd start sliding around in this really weird way that wasn't in the game at all before then.
Oh, fun!
And all you did was like go around and fight these little Grieveling guys and get gifts and stuff, and so you had access to all these like wacky items that did very different things. And it was this really weird mode that I played a lot of the first year it was out, and I think that's actually. Because up until then, I played very few heroes because I was kind of like, I want to do well. I want to make sure that I master this one hero before I branch out to other ones. But because this was like low stakes, like who cares? That was the mode that made me try a bunch of different heroes and kind of get accustomed to them. And so I actually, after that mode, started playing more heroes on the regular than I had before, so it made it like a pretty good time. There was also a Christmas theme mode, by the way. In case that wasn't clear by the river freezing.
I picked
up on that.
Yeah, that's when it happens. Yeah, I think I really liked the first Overwatch holiday, like the Christmas Overwatch event, where it's like the snowball fight. Because I'm a May main. That's the first thing you got to know about me. I'm sorry, everybody. And so I was like, having like this very May focused event was very fun. And then like her Santa skin I want it so bad. I've never wanted the skin so much in my life, and I still do not have that Santa skin. And I haven't touched Overwatch in years. I don't even know. They probably gave that skin to everybody who's played it at any point in the last 2 years, and I've just missed it.
Don't Tell Hansen event was what they called it. And they gave it to everybody.
Yeah.
GTA Online, at least a few years ago, I haven't played it lately, but I always appreciated their winter season, which is just the last couple weeks of the year. It would be snowy everywhere in Los Santos, and it was cool how it would actually make the driving like much more slippery if you're sliding around on the ice.
Oh, that's
but
crazy.
it's hard to top the Hitman one, where it's the Home Alone guys stealing from the Paris level, and Santa is teleporting around, and you can listen for him and find him and kill him and take his clothes.
Damn it, that's fun. Damn it, fun was had. Zion Gonzalez writes in on Patreon and says, would you consider a segment that is the opposite of the Goaty Hunt, where you play oddball/weird games on Steam? Even if it's just 30 minutes, I feel like it'd be funny to watch you guys play weird, broken games. You
Noti Hunt.
Go back, Noti Hunt. Go back in time to, I think, the first Goaty Hunt of the year. We did exactly that, where it was just the Great Goaty Hunt, and it was every game that's released on Steam so far. So it was just a bunch of random games. Were you on that one, Serial?
Was that the one where we played the game where you play as the bird?
Oh, no, that was a different one with that bird game. This was the one where we played like God of Jim, and there's a game called like Defender of the Chronicles or something. Like, it was a very fun look at just a bunch of random
I
games.
have been meaning to go back to God of Jim for Goaty consideration stuff.
Yeah, I got it in my calendar for sure. But yeah, it would be fun to do something like that.
Goaty of Jim.
There we go. Grizzled Gaming writes in and says, hey, gang. Oh, another gang thing. I hope you all are doing fabulous today. Thank you. At this point in MinnMax's history, do you consider yourselves to be more games journalists or content creators? Or poor readers or content creators? I'll take my answer off the air. Thanks. Thank you. I think this is a very astute, interesting question that really made me pause. So at this point, are we more game journalists or content creators?
I feel like I'm kind of in this weird position where I'm in different pools, because I did technically do game journalism earlier this year. I wrote like a profile, and I also am like ostensibly a professional critic, right? So I have kind of, I wouldn't say I'm so much of a journalist as I am a critic, but I think in the context of MinnMax stuff, I think it is like content creator stuff, right? Even though, like, I think the closest analog we have here is like pundits. I think we're like, in this show, we are video game pundits.
Don't use that dirty word. It's pretty bad. Pundit, an Indian word. Did you know that? I forget the exact etymology and history of it, but I looked it up and I was like, oh, of course, it does sound like an Indian word, of course. Yeah, I don't know. I think probably content creator, from being honest, but I was never really at any point comfortable calling myself a journalist. Like, I don't know. I like enthusiast. It seems so much better. It's like, I'm an enthusiast who sometimes really likes video game history and likes doing journalistic things, but I don't know. Leo, are we in the same camp here?
Yeah, it's something I hadn't thought about, but interrogating myself, there's no question that I'm fully on the content creator side. Yeah. Making essays and doing gameplay streams very early on with a game before there's anything close to like an evaluation of it. Like, I'm straight up a content creator.
Straight up.
And I'm loving it.
I did have this weird panic where I saw Game Informer release that Miles Morales cover story, and it's great. I'm glad it's doing really well for him. It's a huge get. And I was just like reliving all of these old anxieties about worrying about exclusivity, worrying about, oh, the screenshots are online. Oh my God, what are we going to do? How do we market this? Okay, got to make the playlist ready. And just like feeling that panic rising again of just like worrying about embargoes and competing and working with big publishers. And it's like, oh, that's nice. It's all, can let it all go. We don't have to worry about working for anybody and with anybody except for the Patreon community. And it's just such a relief.
Yeah. I mean, fully candid, loved working at Game Informer. And I learned a lot about what I liked about being in this business, and that kind of stuff definitely was not fulfilling me in any kind of career or creative way.
Even if it's like fascinating to be that close to, a big company rolling out a huge game like Miles Morales.
Yeah, and very valuable to like as a learning experience. Totally.
Yeah,
but it's
and
like,
also
that's a different part from where I want to be, I think.
Yeah, I think the trips were always the most interesting part of those, because that's when you load it up on info and we're like, oh, I'm just kind of, in a new city, like talking to devs and kind of seeing the studio. And then you have to work out kind of this content schedule and like the rollout of like the cover story. Those were always really like stress inducing in a lot of cases.
Yeah. And that was just my life for 9 years. I was just doing that on a regular rotation. Yeah. It was
You did that, huh?
I did that a lot. Yeah. It's fun. I miss a lot of it. But the stress, I'm very happy to have gone. Now I'm just stressing out about every time Serial you touch your table or something, it makes weird mic sounds. So you want to be mindful of that. Let's see. Interrata has an interesting question. Do you have a preferable time of day to finish a game you've been playing for a long time? For instance, I just finished Ghost of Tsushima and I waited until the afternoon to finish the main story. It just felt right that I spent so much time in that world that I finished it later in the day versus excuse me, I'm not crying, versus the morning. I did the same thing with Breath of the Wild in 2017. Do you have a preference for when you finish a game?
I feel like I never know when I'm about to finish a game.
Yeah.
It could be 1 or 9 hours at any time.
Right, but
certainly the morning's the worst. I would like to do it. If I could pick, I would pick to always do it last thing before bed so I can lay there and soak it in.
Yeah, but not like the way I beat Red Dead 2's entire campaign, which, was I think 3 a.m. or something when I finally wrapped it up. Then I had to go to Game Informer the next day. But I like finishing a game just a little bit past your bedtime. So you're being a little bit naughty. We're talking like 34 minutes past your bedtime, seeing the credits roll. That's peak game finishing.
34 after, not a moment after.
Not a moment after. And
hammering through the last cutscene to finish at the right time.
And then you're stuck in that situation of like, God, do I hit the button to try and skip the credits? I want to see if there's anything after the credits. So I'll let it ride and check my phone for 17 minutes while these credits roll by.
Can't risk it.
Can't risk it. Joshua Lehman says 2020 is a great year for video games, but a horrible year otherwise. Is there any other year you can think of that has the same situation? Great years for gaming that come to mind for me are 1998, 2008, 2011, 2017. Hang on, are good gaming years the cause of everything wrong in the world? Is this a direct correlation?
It's tough to think about because 2020 sure has recontextualized my idea of a bad year. Thinking of any other year that's close?
No, I was really thinking about how funny it is because I was reflecting on the Deepest Dives recently, and I remember in January when we launched the Chrono Trigger Deepest Dive, like the entire framing for that one and like the pitch video to say get ready for the Deepest Dive in Chrono Trigger was like, hey, we're in a dark place. We got to pull the ripcord, pull the parachute, and go for the happiest place on earth, the world of Chrono Trigger. And now it's like, oh boy, we're pulling the ripcord in January, you fools.
I feel like that happened a lot with 2019 as well. Just like, oh man, this trash fire every year. It's I think to me the last year I remember like pretty fondly, even outside of like game stuff, was maybe 2015. Because I think on the game front, like there was just for me a lot of like personal highs of like Metal Gear Solid 5, Witcher 3, Undertale,
Bloodborne, right? Is that 2015?
Yeah, Bloodborne as well. And then just like it didn't feel like anything terrible was happening at the time, but maybe like besides like the regular amount of terrible stuff that happens in the world on a regular basis, but it definitely did not feel like are we like kind of sort of in the end times? Is this is something real bad is about to happen? I don't know. I didn't have that kind of anxiety. That probably wasn't until late the next year that I think that kind of started creeping in.
Yeah. Well, 2015, I'm looking up the biggest news stories, and I think we all recall this blast from the past. Racial unrest over police killings roils U.S. cities. So that was 2015, everybody.
Yeah, that's fair. But like also, I guess I don't want to necessarily compare tragedies, but it just feels like that was maybe even that was like more prominent this year.
Yeah,
but,
I was going for the idea that it has never stopped.
That things have always been bad in the long view. Things have been bad for a long time.
Yeah,
Wait a second.
It does. I do have to pause because I think 2020 has been so great for gaming, but you feel like a jerk saying that, or even like 2020 personally has been really good for me. Like moved into this house with my girlfriend and things are going well, and like MinnMax is the best thing. And so it's really tough to talk about that without sounding like a giant a-hole in every way. So I probably shouldn't have just mentioned that on a podcast, and I apologize.
Well, as someone who thinks that games as a whole on average have just gotten better and better for my time gaming. It kind of does track with as they get better, the other things kind of race towards not better.
There we go. Mick Manga writes in, sorry to bring up an old question, but removing any historical significance, I think Chrono Trigger might still make the top 100 games. We talked about this on the podcast a couple weeks ago. It's still a blast to play, can easily invoke a sense of wonder even for those who've never played it before. What do you guys think? Removing nostalgia, would Chrono Trigger still make the top 100 games of all time list?
A blast to play?
Blast might be, it's fun, and it's engaging, and it's fun. Charming. I think if we're removing all historical significance, I think Chrono Trigger's close on that list.
I don't know. I do like that game quite a bit, but I think I'd have to think about it outside of that context, right? Because so much of my appreciation of it is like, oh man, look at what they were able to pull off back then. This felt like such a weird coming together of like, the Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest teams. But I think about like even stuff that I've played recently, and I feel like it may not be historically significant, but I think I enjoy this more. But
yeah, it's tough. That's a real tough one. Henrik Mortensen writes in, hello, what do you think the gaming world would look like today if the PlayStation and the Super Nintendo actually merged in the 90s? Do you think Nintendo would just swallow them whole, or do you think games like Ratchet & Clank and God of War would ever be released? Answer me. P.S. Banjo-Kazooie is better than the masterpiece that is Super Mario 64. Okay, if you insist. If it was the PlayStation and Super Nintendo merger back in the 90s, what would have happened?
I don't think Nintendo would have eaten Sony because I think Sony's too large to have let that happen even then.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
I think we still end up with a separate thing. I think at some point they have a falling out. I think you maybe get one or two consoles where that's the case. And I think Sony eventually decides they don't want to work with Nintendo or vice versa, and they just end up releasing their own thing.
I'm with you. I think it would have been one generation, and then Sony's like, wait a minute, we want money. And I'm sure Nintendo's like, wait a minute, we don't want to give this cut of all of our profits to Sony every time, or however they were going to figure out that deal to have the disc drive.
Yeah, that does make me think about where does Sega stand in that as like the only competitor at that point, and where does Microsoft enter way later in the console race? Do they enter earlier because they see an opening? I think the stuff around them as a pair, I think, is maybe more interesting to think about than they probably would have released one or two PlayStations under the Nintendo name, but what does the rest of the gaming landscape look like?
Yeah, great question, Henrik. What a thinker.
Yeah.
Vincent Baker. Leo, could you have sounded nicer when you said yeah?
Yeah.
Great. Vincent Baker says, hey, cohorts, I'm curious, what was PE like for you in high school or gym? Did you enjoy it? Were you bullied? Any fun stories? Boy, that was a nightmare. Literally 2 days ago, I was talking to my girlfriend about gym, and it is the only class where I consistently got D minuses. I hated gym, and it was... Leo knows this. I'm a bit of a goody two-shoes. And I did pretty well in school outside of this, but gym was just that was my punk rock zone. That's where the teacher would tell me to do something and I'd be like, not going to do that. I just hated it. I had no problem being nice to the teacher, but just being like, I'm not going to participate in this nonsense. Because I was so physically uncomfortable, realistically, in a lot of these situations, and just terrible. So I would just goof around and be silly with my friends. I remember... This is a weird, specific, incredibly boring story. But I remember it's okay, everybody play basketball for 30 minutes, whatever the hell gym is. And I was like, okay, well, my friends and I think best friend Ronnie's probably one of them here. We just got basketballs and we just bounced the basketballs in complete unison and then just walked around the gym and went, play with us, Jinxie. And it was just we just role-played weirdos that were bouncing basketballs in unison and slowly parading around the basketball court. That's how we got D minuses. But that was my gym experience. I don't know.
That's how you got so jacked.
That's right. One arm is huge. Did you enjoy gym? What was your gym life?
I avoided it completely. I did online gym.
Shut up.
in the summer after junior year. I avoided it completely, partially because I was involved in band, so I could always be like, well, that's gonna be my elective period every year. And then, I graduated, and they only let me walk because I promised I was going to finish my gym credit that summer. And then I barely did on the last day by filling in my schedule of workouts with completely lies.
Really? Online gym? They just say...
Online gym. Never touched the gym floor at that high school.
That's insane. I'm also confused about having gym being elective. In my mind, that seemed like it was a lock.
Yeah, I mean, it was required for sure. I don't really know how I got away with that. But
No, I think my school was also like you can either do band or gym. Was I think
Really?
the choice that you had to make, and I didn't want to do band, so I ended up doing gym. But yeah, I was a much bigger kid in high school, so I think the teachers just said as long as he's putting in any kind of effort, I think we're okay with him. And so what we ended up doing was like whenever I had a class with friends, we would just be like. It was weird because we had like the gym had rafters in it, and there was like this kind of like whenever you played basketball, you had to pull the rafters out, and when you pulled them in, it was like I think that was for like other sports like volleyball and stuff. And so there were like there was this hidden rafter area on the higher floors and whatever, and so we would just tell the teacher, we're gonna go play soccer up there on the like in the area behind the rafters, and so we would just go up there and just like shoot the crap for however long gym was. And every time we hear the teacher come in, we'd be like, hey, okay, everybody start pretending you're playing soccer or whatever. And then we would immediately go back to sitting on tables and just talking about whatever was going on. But then we'd have to run the mile. And that was like the big day because we would go outside of the track field area. And that was like the one day that you had to actually put in some effort. And as well as like the pacer test. I don't know if you guys ever did that.
No.
It was basically it was like they would play this song with like this really convoluted intro of like the test will begin. It was like this tape where they would tell you, the test will begin in 30 seconds. And so they would play this thing where they would play this song, and every few seconds you'd hear a beep, and you'd have to run across the entire length of the gym basically in that time. And if you didn't, you were eliminated and you got like a D for the class or whatever.
What?
And so like the higher number of laps effectively that you were able to do, the higher the grade. And so I think there was like a certain number of laps that you had to do in order to pass. And so everyone was kind of stressed out. But then there would always be like people who just wanted to keep going or whatever. And so the songs would get faster and faster, and the beats would come like sooner and sooner. So you'd see like everyone would just end up watching the three kids left. And I would always I would always do well enough to pass, but that was also another time where it's like, okay, everyone else is doing the pacer test. It's like 2 rounds of this, so we can just screw off for the next hour or so or whatever.
Jesus, that sounds like a nightmare. Yeah. Oh, just thinking about how much of my life was framed around when is that mile coming up in gym. Mm-hmm. It was just the biggest nightmare because you're right. It was just the immovable object of you have to do this, and I have to be embarrassed, and I have to make it half a lap and then walk the rest. I think I told the story before, but one time I passed out or tripped or fell while running the mile and snapped my pinky. It was brutal. So never a fan of gym. But you know what? Maybe I was too much of a little stinker. Maybe I should have just ran around in a circle for a while and blended in and upped my GPA in a huge way. Matthew Weatherly writes in and says, I recently listened to what some might say is the deepest, most thorough discussion about Mario 64 on the internet. I'm sorry, no, Matthew, listen to the best, most thorough discussion about Super Mario 64 on the internet. I love the talk you had about the ending credits music for Super Mario 64 and how it brought back memories. That same day, I watched a speedrun of Mario Land and could not believe how good the credits music is in that game as well. It really took me back to being a kid and finally finishing a game, putting the Game Boy down, and taking in those sweet tunes. What is your favorite or most memorable ending credit music track in a game? I think Matthew might be right. I think number one end credits theme might be Super Mario Land. Let's take a listen here because I forgot how good this was. Not this part, but sets the tone. We're getting there, folks. Super Mario Land. Dare I say, still underrated soundtrack? It's so good throughout that entire thing.
It's a catchy little ditty.
Yeah. Backstage Pass, lighten up. People love it.
I really like the ending credits song from Rogue Legacy. That one I've gone back to and listened to over the years.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I think
it kind of sounds like that Sufjan Stevens song from Little Miss Sunshine. And it kind of does.
Is it sound a little something like this? Is it sound a little something like this, Leo? Hang on, this is the ending. Hang on. Oh, this is way too quiet. Well, Leo, does it sound a little something like that?
If you can't hear.
Oh, hang on.
It probably does.
It's called The Fish and the Whale. Is this it?
I don't think so. I think it's called Whale Shark. Parentheses ending credits.
Oh, here it is. Okay, yeah. Oh, this is end sequence sad music. Sad version, it says.
Great. I do love a melancholic ending credit track. Reflecting on the game's events. Takes a bit to get going.
That is nice. It's so tough to divorce yourself from the music versus like what's happening in the game, or even I thought of like Final Fantasy VIII, but it's like, well, that's just the great version of the Final Fantasy theme, but with the great cutscene to it. But hang on.
Ending credits at this time, you're also seeing like all the amounts of each enemy you've killed and stats like that.
Fun.
And I thought it was really interesting, like wrap up of like, yeah, here's everything I've accomplished.
That is good. That's excellent. Of course,
does
people...
anyone remember the ending theme of Yoshi's Story? I don't think that's necessarily a good one, but that's one that I have stuck in my head more than I probably would like. That's the one where the Yoshis all sing, like they all just say the word Nintendo over and over.
What?
I think you want to cut to like the middle. Cut to like 2 minutes.
Oh.
Had you not heard this before?
I don't think I've ever
Smash
heard
Brothers,
that.
isn't
That's
it?
so.
I
don't think so. I just like
And
the
to
idea.
think, if Nintendo and PlayStation had merged, they'd be saying Nintendo and PlayStation.
It just feels like, they hired Koji Kondo to make a track, and then he fell asleep, and so the assistant had to come up with something. It's like, what's some Koji Kondo crap? I don't know. Just the word Nintendo over and over again.
People like Alvin and the Chipmunks, right?
Oh my god, that's so funny. But yeah, people in the deepest dive chat, they bring up, of course, Portal 1. I mean, that's probably the correct answer here, but let us know in the comments what you like for greatest end credit music. Yeah, a lot of good contenders out there. Okay, question of the week. What do y'all like?
I kind of like that gym one.
I got the God of Jim. I like the old games being more surreal question. I think that's interesting.
Yeah,
Sure.
I like that one too. I like what games are you fine just being okay at?
It does have a cute story associated. I'm leaning old games being surreal. Do you want to?
Sure. That's fine.
All right, let's do it. Congratulations, Jonathan Fenn. You win a great album from I Am 8-Bit, the Gang Beasts vinyl soundtrack. Thanks so much for your support. And now it's time
If the prize was ever Gang Beasts, and somebody wrote in and was like, yeah, all my family died playing Gang Beasts, so I love it for some reason, would we all be like, we should probably give them question of the week, right?
Well, we wouldn't, because they're a maniac. I love it because my family was tortured and killed while playing Gang Beasts.
Well, yeah, we kind of failed to think of an example quickly, but you understand my point.
Well, they're like, yeah, my grandma just passed, and we played Gang Beast together every day since she was 4.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. I don't think we should skew it that way. I'm pretty strict with this crap, Leo.
Okay.
Because we've been doing this for a long time, and I feel like there's a tendency, because people write in with sad, real stuff, and not that I don't want to encourage that. You can write in with whatever you want, but if we're constantly giving it to the sympathy case, I think it generates that, and we don't want to bum people out every episode of the podcast, just like every other, like a good podcast. Anyways, now it's time for something we call Get a Load of This. Leo, wow me.
I don't know if you want to pause here, but I completely forgot about this segment.
Leo, we don't pause on this show. I have something for you.
Bugsnax, what's up?
Oh, here. I'll send it to you real quick.
And you gotta act excited about it. You gotta be like, hey guys, check this out.
Right.
Get a load of this, if you will.
Okay, so open it up and then... Leo, what do you got, man?
Get a load of this. This is incredible. A snowball fight filmed by cinema pioneers the Lumiere Bros in France, 1896. It's been colorized and had the speed adjusted. So you guys, are you visualizing it? It looks cool.
No, I saw this.
There's a link. There's a link below if you want to check this out. It's awesome to see. Basically, what they did with They Will Never Grow Old. Is that what the Peter Jackson World War I documentary is? Which is just incredible for modernizing old footage and seeing the snowball fight from 1896, and it just looks like somebody filming a snowball fight now. It's beautiful. It's poetic. It makes you realize, like, oh, people is people. I understand. But like, here's what a nerd I am. For a long time, I was thinking about, like, man, if I had a time machine, what would be fun is to go back and set a modern video camera in the exact spot where they filmed old movies. And then you could have like a beautiful looking version of all those old movies if you cut it the exact same way. Now I realize I don't need no stinking time machine. Like, technology is that time machine. Like, we are going to be able to, with this crazy computerized, let's just say algorithm, just take all of that old stuff. The computer can fill in the holes with frog DNA or whatever the hell it does and make it look like this amazing HD version. Like, forget Toy Story. We're going to have modern, amazing versions of all those original films that everybody loves. Sterling are always raving about Birth of a Nation. You'll finally have your HD version of that. Wouldn't it be crazy?
Yeah. Took the words right out of my mouth. I mean, that's why I thought it was so worth talking about today.
That's great. All right.
We make jokes, but I would like to not endorse Birth of a Nation.
Let's strike that from the record.
Noted.
Let's be real for a moment. I think a lot of people are actually talking about how the guy on the bike in that video just gets completely pelted. Just by everybody. As soon as he passes by, he would dare to pass by that snowball fight.
Yeah.
And then someone yells World Star, which I don't think had been invented yet.
Yeah, that's really
weird for them to say.
Anyways, Earl, do you have one?
This will be a quick one. Get a load of this. This is a tweet that blew up. Though I'm not entirely sure this is real, so take it with a grain of salt. But PJ Evans, who's verified, so I have to imagine this is true, posted that 2 images with the caption, "The Amityville Horror House, where 6 people were murdered, feels the need to decorate for Halloween." And so they have 2 photos of what looks to me like the Amityville Horror House, with like just kind of like spider webs on the bushes and these like little kind of like black and white ghosts where it's like this they just have like a cloak around them, but the skull is white. And so and that looks to be what their decorations are so far. Someone else posted another photo of, like, I guess they added more decorations later on, but it is very weird to see something from that was recreated in a movie and people have been talking about as a real place where something real bad happens. And they have like a beware sign in the yard, which is such a weird thing to see.
That's so funny. I love the idea of, no, actually, yeah, people were murdered here. People lost their lives, but look at those spooky fake goblins on the porch. Like, that's such a flimsy, funny idea.
Beware of dog.
Imagine if there were goblins here too.
Ooh, look out. There might be behind you. Hey, get a load of this, everybody. I've been continuing to listen to this history podcast that I like a lot called The Constant, which is a history of getting things wrong. It's just bite-sized little stories from history, usually framed around people getting stuff wrong. They had this huge miniseries called The Fool Killer, which is about a mysterious submarine that people found in Chicago in 1915, and they don't know where it came from, which is insane. But that story started with this story that I had never heard before. Maybe I haven't spent enough time in Chicago. But have you guys ever heard of the boat called the Eastland? Eastland? No. This boat was in the Chicago River, and it was 1 year... So 1915, so it was 1 year after the Titanic sank. And after the Titanic sunk, obviously everybody's like, well, put lifeboats on your boat, everybody. What are you doing? So it was mandated every boat needed a certain number of lifeboats. So the Eastland was this boat, and they put a bunch of lifeboats up on the top, but it made it too top heavy. So this boat tipped over in the Chicago River. It killed 844 people. Like, that's... more than half that died in the Titanic. It's just an insane disaster that I didn't know about. And like in the podcast, they talked about, the Chicago fire, this horrific disaster in Chicago. It killed 300 people. Meanwhile, this freaking boat killed 844. So, I hope that improves your day, listeners. A lot of people died a long time ago. It was terrible. Hey, the community get a load of this. Chris Fader posted in the Discord this tweet. There's a Reddit post, actually, which is something that we should have thought of a long time ago, but somebody made a Final Fantasy clock on Reddit where they just have a hand on their wall, and then they have the Final Fantasy logos for 1 through 12. Isn't that a good idea? How has Square not actually released this? It's right there.
Well, I think Square Enix would want to add, more hours to the to the day, basically.
They do the military
so they could
clock?
add the rest of them, or they're just waiting until they can do the 24-hour version.
Right.
It starts at. They're going to make a Final Fantasy 0, so it starts at 0,
They already
and then
have
it goes
Type 0.
all the way to. There you go. So you start with Type 0, and then once they get to Final Fantasy 24. Or 23, because it never goes to 24. They'd have to get to Final Fantasy 23. So look for that whenever that comes out.
And they can do it whenever. Like, they don't have to actually do the numbered version. They can have it go to 10 and then to 10-2 before it goes to 11.
Yeah, Leo, I think we have a Zoom meeting at Decidia. So you don't want to be... Decidia Central.
Oh, no. See, I have to run out at Lightning Returns, so I don't think I'll be able to make that meeting.
Thanks to everybody that supports us on MinnMax. We're coming up on a year anniversary. It is October 24th. So next week, we're going to be celebrating our anniversary in a funky way, where if you're at the Backstage Pass, that $10 tier, we are going to be releasing our 2 first meetings about MinnMax that we recorded. These are early meetings. It's so funny. It's like bringing Jeffem on board for the first time. And it seemed like at first he wasn't going to be at that cohort level. He was going to be down a tier. And then he was like, no, of course I want to be up that. So like, he didn't know that I was quitting my job. He didn't know that we were launching a Patreon. Like, these are very, very raw discussions, and they're fun to listen to. So if you're at that $10 Backstage Pass, we'll be releasing those 2 discussions. Suriel, what do you remember about those early meetings?
Yeah, it was interesting having those conversations, obviously. Having a lot of that dealt with, the fallout of layoffs and stuff. But yeah, it was weird just building something from the ground up that way. It was also very weird that, like, back then, Jeffem didn't even know he was going to have a kid by now, and that you surprised him with that info.
That was surprising. Yeah. A lot of people have been asking, where's Jeffem? I wanted to leave it to him. He tweeted it out. But yes, Jeffem has not been on the podcast for a while because he had a little baby. He became a little Jeff Markia father, as the Discord calls him, which is just fantastic. So congratulations to Jeffem and his wife for beautiful baby Kai. So he'll talk about it at some point in the future, whenever he stops wiping a butt or whatever he's doing now. shepherding a new life. I don't exactly know how it works.
Yeah, it's really easy to just call it. Yeah, he's like wiping a butt. I don't know. What else do you do with kids? I don't know.
Yeah, that whole thing. But anyways, yeah, if you've enjoyed our content in the last year, we'd appreciate some support on Patreon. I think it's a good time to jump up and say thanks, and you can hear those early discussions, and they're very, very surreal. Leo, anything you'd like to plug, sir?
New Watch Later will be up now for patrons and later for everyone else.
Yeah.
On a weird topic, maybe the Return of the King game that I was obsessed with as a kid.
I think there's a lot of fans of that. Like those license games that everybody bought and no one talks about critically, there's a lot of wiggle room there.
This isn't why I did it, but literally while I was putting this together, I got recommended a video on YouTube that was a Return of the King game review from a year ago that had like 1.5 million views.
Oh my God.
So maybe there are people out there just like me who know about what Lord of the Rings is. And I also want to consistently plug the Backstage Pass streams for people at the $10 tier, which are always a blast. And that's a lot of hours or a week you're getting.
Yeah. And so you can watch Leo edit all of Watch Later, which is a cool experience. And also like they shape the jokes and stuff. Like it's a cool idea.
Lot. They have a consistent through line of input. That's very
awesome.
fun.
That's great. Cyril, anything you want to plug, man?
I'm trying to think if there's anything I didn't. No, I guess just listen to the Deepest Dive on Mario, which I really enjoyed.
Oh, thanks. Thanks so much.
And then also the refresh that Anna and Sarah did on VTubers, which I really enjoyed as well.
Yeah, about the rise of VTubers. So that podcast is in the Patreon exclusive podcast feed, but then also on YouTube you can watch Refreshed for free. And yeah, it's a good chance. I saw a lot of comments last week about like more